tonight,
Okay. That's fine.
yeah, he's here.
We're going to begin the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Tuesday, November 12th. I'm going to start with a few announcements. This weekend, there will be a holiday marketplace with pop-up vendors at 2 Brookline Place in Brookline Village on Saturday from noon until 5 p.m. And on Sunday, the Winter Farmers Market will continue from noon until 5 p.m. in the Arcade Building in Coolidge Corner. Tomorrow, Wednesday, at 7 p.m. in this room, the Brookline Neighborhood Alliance, Town Meeting Members Association, and League of Women Voters will hold a discussion on warrant articles before the November special town meeting. On Sunday afternoon, the 17th, at 2 p.m. in the Town Hall lobby, by the 1884 memorial plaques mounted on the wall, and also in the spirit of the week of Veterans Day, the Brookline Historical Society will present Remembering Brookline's Civil War Dead, with stories of the lives of enlisted men and officers who gave their lives defending the Union. And next Tuesday, the Board of Selectmen will be meeting at Brookline High School before the special town meeting, probably at 6 p.m. Also, I want to remind everybody that First Light is a week from Wednesday, November 21st. It will be from 5 to 8 p.m., and it will occur around town in many locations, Brookline Village, Putnam Circle, St. Mary's, Coolidge Corner, JFK Crossing, and Washington Square. There's a complete listing of events at www.firstlightbrookline.com. Other announcements from members of the board? Yes. Selectman Goldstein.
Just like to commend our Veterans Affairs Administrator, Bill McGrody, on a very moving and
Yes.
well-run ceremony for Veterans Day yesterday, and also to commend Selectman Daley, whose remarks were succinct and poignant.
Yeah, can I just add,
Please.
because I want to get that message out a little farther. We keep hearing from Bill, who does a great job, I think, on behalf of our veterans, how many of them are coming back with PTSD, as
Right.
well as, other physical injuries, and how hard it is to get services from the Veterans Hospital. The veterans system is simply overwhelmed. And what I suggested in my remarks yesterday was that that people need to do more than to certainly thank the veterans that they know for their service, but also maybe do a little more and see if there's, provide an ear to listen to people's things and maybe help them find a job. Maybe contribute to an organization like the Home Base Program at Mass General Hospital, which treats people with traumatic brain injury and PTSD. And also, to maybe contact our legislators about better funding for veteran services.
And I know Bill McGrody handholds people, drives them over to the VA hospital, and drives around in circles, waiting to be sure that they are able to get in and get taken care of. He's clearly, truly dedicated to supporting our veterans. Selectman Benka.
Yeah, just following up on this theme of Veterans Day. After the ceremonies here at Town Hall, there was a lunch at the American Legion VFW post on the corner of Washington Street and Cypress Street. And I just wanted to note that post has been renovated, and it absolutely sparkles now.
Yeah, did a beautiful
and
job.
It is, I think, for those who are looking for a venue, it has really been brought back to life, and people should be aware of that resource in our town.
Yeah, they really did a nice job
Yeah,
on that.
that's great to know, and I hope other people will take advantage of it. Okay, we ready to move on to our miscellaneous items? Minutes, October 29th and also November 5th. Are there corrections or
I have given
additions?
some corrections to Kate.
And I do have some
As
comments.
did I.
And as did
All
I.
right, then I'm going to move that we approve the minutes from October 29th and November 5th as amended. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And Ms. Goff, you have an update for us?
Good evening.
Are you planning to be visual as
I'm
well?
going to try and be visual.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make the board aware of some exciting things that were going on in the Selectmen's office this season. This is our busy time. This is our online, or our license renewals for a lot of our major licenses in town. And so we've been working to make some enhancements not only to the website, but also ability to pay, and so just wanted to kind of give the board a little bit of
And
an overview.
we're getting this better than affordable care, I hope?
Yes, it's going actually very well. So before I start, I wanted to thank the team that I've been working with. It's been really great working with everyone, especially getting an appreciation for all the work that our staff does do in the office. So Patty Parks, Brenda Costello, Dale and Fung in IT, Patty Correa, Andy Martineau, and Sean. It's been a real team effort. It's been really a great team to be working with. So a few things that have happened kind of in the meantime before we rolled out our online renewals is we've had a lot of regulations changing, we've had a lot of payment fee schedules updated, and so this team has kind of had to swiftly adapt as all these things were going on. And the exciting feature that we have is online renewals for a lot of our license types. And so I just was happy to report that as of today, we have about 13% of our eligible licenses that are applying online, and that just kind of shows you how simple it is, and how people are kind of really understanding how easy it is to be able to not only apply online, but then pay online as well. We also accept credit cards in the office too. And so just wanted to highlight it, just a few new features with our website is that we've got the main licensing page. Then we have the fee schedule, which is the latest fees that have recently been adopted by the board are included in this fee schedule. Then we have the applications themselves. So let's say you don't feel like applying online, but you still want to download the forms, you can still do that here. And then all the regulations that have just recently been voted on and revised are also here. So just wanted to give you that quick update.
Questions for Ms. Goff? Yes.
No, I
Selectman
just
Daley?
want to say while Ms. Goff is there at the microphone, and I'm sorry Mr. Cronin isn't in the room, but
Stealing your thunder.
Melissa and Sean have once again received the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award for the budget book that we all get each year. This is for last year's, right? Yeah. And you guys, I know, put in a tremendous amount of work, and I feel that the book gets better and clearer every year, and I certainly really appreciate, how even those of us who are not, I guess maybe after this many years, I'm almost counted as a budget professional, but I was going to say that even the amateurs, I think, can find their way through the book and find out what's going on with the budget, so congratulations and thank you.
Thank you, and I will note that this was a goal that was in the Selectmen's objectives that now next year we'll be able to report as an accomplishment, so just kind of shows you how it all connects.
And I just want to say, having participated with Selectman Goldstein in a review of our licensing regulations, that I think we now should feel quite good about the fact that our regulations are up to date. They're pretty clear and understandable, and having this additional access point, I think, is going to really going to smooth things and make applications much simpler and clearer for those folks who have to come through the process. I know the renewals are much easier, but for everybody who has to come in for the first time, this should be the place to start. That's great. Selectman Benka?
Melissa, you indicated that 13% of licenses are now being renewed online. Are all licenses able to be renewed online, all types at this
So
point?
under the category that the selectmen have, the only license type that we weren't able to roll out was lodging houses because there were notifications that happened prior to us starting this project that didn't enable us to roll that in. But everything else that the selectmen have for renewals is being done online.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments?
I assume that you can pay online, too. is
Yes,
what you're saying.
liquor licenses, you still need to use the state form and mail that back into the selectman's office, but you can pay for your liquor license online.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much, and we look forward to 100% online
Thank you.
in the future. Not
you.
necessarily right now, but in the future. Okay, our next item is a gift for the senior center. Ms. Dobek?
Yes, good evening. The senior center project went out to bid, and the low bid was returned at $190,000. So I'm here tonight to offer the second installment of a gift from our nonprofit Brookline Multi-Service Senior Center Corporation in the amount of $55,000. And that will get us to what we need for the project. We are still looking to fundraise for the other additional items that may come up, but we are well on our way to even covering what may occur from contingency and hopefully not too many change orders.
Right, but I do believe this puts you over the top, right? So that you
Correct.
have a
So-
little margin there.
We have a little bit of margin, and we still may come back again with another gift as things move into that next level.
Okay. Questions for Ms. Dobek? I think we all know what the project is. Selectman Daley?
Yeah, no, I just want to say, I think this is going to be great. This is taking the old space that was used by, for the home, the daycare program for Alzheimer's patients, and turning it into a sort of recreation,
Fitness, yes.
fitness area and
Yeah,
whatever.
let me step back, because I just was here with the other gift, so excuse me, I thought I forgot I needed to give the update. The project is two-phased. The old Rogerson, as we call it, which was the day health program, will be renovated into a fitness center to accommodate the Nautilus machines and equipment. We are also transforming one extra bathroom into medical office space for nurses, blood pressure, podiatry, et cetera. And then that will leave the basement lower level to be renovated into meeting space, so that where the current fitness center will be able to have meetings and programs in the basement area.
Sounds great.
But I also just want to add that, the senior center gala that I think we all attended a couple of weeks ago is such a wonderful event, and that's where you get the money from people that contribute and come to that gala for this sort of thing, right?
Exactly, and again, we'll be sending out an appeal letter. A couple of the items that don't impact the renovation but are on our wish list is we need to upgrade our audiovisual equipment at the senior center, and so that will be one of our next campaigns, as well as you know, at the autumn benefit is the running of the van and any other of the furniture or new equipment for the fitness center. So we still have some work to do, but as you said, Selectman DeWitt, this is getting us right where we need to be for the actual renovation project.
Well, it's interesting, too, how once you've got it started off and in motion and people can see the changes, then there's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm. Right.
That's what we hope.
Okay. Then I move that we accept a gift of $45,000 from the nonprofit Brookline Multi-Service Senior Center Corporation to be used for the renovation project at the Brookline Senior Center. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you very much.
Right,
And then
I
you
think you
probably
can
want to
then-
hear the next item, which
Yeah.
is the contract.
Yep, raise right here, thanks, Ray.
Mr. Mazick.
Ray Masak, Building Department. We're really excited about this project, as Ruth Ann said. We got 7 bids, so we got a very favorable response. And the lowest responsible bidder is GTC Construction Management. So with the funding in place, we now ask that the contract be signed.
Okay, any questions?
We worked with GTC before?
No. But based on the references, they got very good
They look pretty
references.
good. I read the references, right.
We had references from work they did at UMass Lowell and South Shore Charter School,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which
both
are-
projects larger than this one.
All right.
But similar
Yeah.
public projects, and that's what we
Yep.
want.
Have they ever bid before? Do you know?
Not on town project work, so they're a new player from what I understand, so. I'll probably see them in, they do smaller projects, so anytime we have another smaller project, we'll probably see these folks, if we have another successful project.
Okay.
All right, we ready to take a vote? Then I move that we approve and execute a contract for renovations at the Brookline Senior Center in the amount of $189,623 with GTC Construction Management of Haverhill, Mass. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Thank you and good luck. Mr. Simmons, proprietary vote. I'm now beginning to have enough experience that I know what this is about, which sounds so odd, but do explain.
Requesting board take a vote for proprietary equipment for the modulars at the Lawrence School. This will help us prevent problems of connecting the modular to the existing buildings and bid protests.
And basically what you're trying to do is coordinate with other equipment that we have in other locations.
Exactly.
So it's all consistent with same
Yes.
specs. Questions for Mr. Simmons?
So I want to understand it a little bit better, Charlie. It needs to conform with other modular classroom space that we have?
As an example, the fire alarm system, the modulars will come with fire alarm equipment pre-wired, but it needs to be able to connect to the fire alarm panel in the building. So it should be notifier-based equipment.
Got it?
It's not ju, yeah, it's the
So
stuff
it's-
we have in all of our buildings.
Okay.
This is just a vote for the modulars.
It
as we
sort
go
of
along.
changes the process so that we know we'll get something compatible.
I see.
It's procurement,
Okay.
technical, I guess I would say. Yes, please.
Yeah, the only, very quickly, the only one that I was curious about was the door hardware. And I could see why the locks should be, you know, they should be keyed in the same way. So I see the Schlage, or Schlag, or Schlag, however
Schlage,
it's pronounced.
yeah.
Schlage.
Schlage.
However the locks are pronounced. What are LCN and Von Duprin?
LCN door closers, Von Duprin door hardware like hinges. A lot of the parts are interchangeable and sometimes pieces get broken and I can take 2 and make 1 out of them.
Okay, so these are what are in the rest of,
Yes. Rest of the town, rest of the school.
Rest of the town, not, my point was, it's not in other modulars that we have.
No, we don't
It's
have
not-
any other.
We don't have other modulars, but it's
Okay.
the rest of the school buildings. anyway.
Exactly.
okay.
All
Fair
right,
enough.
are we now very clear about what this proprietary vote is all about?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen it before,
Yeah,
Chairman
right.
DeWitt, for energy management systems and the fire alarm systems.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't recall ever seeing it before for door hardware.
I put it in for Runkle.
Did you? Okay. Good, okay.
But the notion of interchangeability actually is
Absolutely.
very much
No, absolutely.
going in the right direction.
And-
Okay,
And the other issue is that there are a variety of vendors
Yes.
for this equipment, so there's still a
Right.
competitive process.
There is still some competition
Right.
that we would normally have anyway.
Right.
okay. I move that we approve a proprietary vote for the following equipment in connection with the Lawrence School Modular Classroom Project for door hardware, energy management systems, and fire alarm. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Mr. Simmons. We now have another gift, a bomb sniffing gift. Chief, what are we doing?
No, not quite, not quite.
All right.
When the U.S. Amateur Golf Tournament came to the country club during August, we had to do the security plans for the event. And based on what happened in April at the marathon, we wanted to make sure that we had the capability of handling suspicious packages and the fact that there may have been something stronger, a bomb placed there. So with that, we entered an agreement. We asked Boston to provide a bomb dog and handlers and bomb technicians with the idea that we would apply to UASI to offset some of those costs. UASI, because it was an international event and we were going outside of our department, they went ahead and approved $15,000. So we can take that $15,000 and pay the Boston Bomb Squad. There is an additional cost for them of $1,202, and we will build a country club for that.
Okay, sounds good, and I'm sorry that you have to go to the additional efforts to provide security, but I'm glad you did.
Thank you.
Questions for the chief? All right, I move that we accept funds in the amount of $15,000 from the FY 2010 Urban Area Security Initiative to offset costs for operational overtime for the Boston Police Department Explosive Ordnance Disposal Team at the U.S. Amateur Open Golf Tournament at the Country Club. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Thank you.
And next item, we back to solar. Ms. Goff?
Hello. So as we move further along in our negotiations with our potential solar sites, municipal sites, we need to engage with an owner's agent. An owner's agent will provide that technical advice that we currently don't have in-house. And because we are partnered with the MAPC through the regional program, we're able to access the consultant that we've already been working with and that MAPC has engaged with Cadmus. So I'm just asking for the board's authorization to give the chair the ability to sign an agreement with MAPC so that we can engage with our consultant. And we've identified funding not in the Green Communities grant funds that we currently have, but we also just found out we got a grant from the Department of Energy Resources for owner's agent services that we
Saw
can
that.
use for this as well.
Okay, great. Questions? Yes,
So the
Selectman
bottom
Benka.
line is no out-of-pocket cost to the town.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Then I move that we authorize the chairman to execute a letter of agreement with MAPC in an amount not to exceed $15,000 for regional solar consultant support services. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have another request for a noise bylaw waiver for construction on White Place. I think we heard about this at our last meeting, and I understand that a combination of weather and also the T providing extra services prevented the work from being done on schedule as planned. So what's the current plan?
The current plan is another 2 more days, hopefully. But
Okay.
every time you give us only 2 more days, if it goes another day, I have to wait 5 days before I can come back to you. Is it possible to get 4, 5 days till next Tuesday, maybe?
I think so.
I have no objection. I'd
Yeah,
certainly like you to get
I
your
think
work
we've-
done.
I think we've been delighted to
and-
see you these many, many times, but perhaps,
I've been
Given
delighted to
given
be
that
here.
the chief is also in the room, I hope we will get the word out that the waiver is being voted, because there was a little miscommunications, I believe, a week ago.
Yeah, we did get shut down for one night from that.
Yeah, okay, and to be clear, you must notify the neighbors. I believe that's why you got shut down. At least they felt they were not aware that the work was intended to be done on that time.
Okay, I will make sure that
All right,
happens.
so you really need to let your abutters know. All right, any questions, members of the board? Then I move that we grant the owners of 46 White Place an extension of the noise bylaw waiver through Tuesday, I think it's November 19th. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Thank you.
Good luck. I hope the T continues to turn its power off.
Me too.
Okay, next we have a couple of licenses. I think, no. Yes, yes, yes. Mr. Clooney? Mr. Clooney, we're, I think some questions came up, and then I gather that you have changed your planning for this event.
Yes.
So I just want to say for your information that it is, or has raised some questions that the teen center is being used for events that are not for teens. And I assume that there's good reason for that.
Yes,
That you could possibly explain.
There's two issues here. One is.
And the other question was, will there be young people present during this event?
Yes. So I see two questions in there. So let me talk first about this event and then answer sort of the larger
Sure.
question. Does that make sense?
Yeah, please.
First of all, I am really ecstatic to be associated with the TEDx Beacon Street event. And as a public service announcement, I'd like to suggest that people really take a look at it. It's a 2-day free conference that's happening at the Lincoln School, and it's really bringing together great minds, innovators, and collaborators to talk about sort of the big questions facing us in our future. And new ideas. And so it's a great way to spread ideas. And as the Teen Center, we are delighted to be a part of that. And we will be simulcasting some of the talks along with Google and the Microsoft Nerd Center as well. So the teens will be able to watch the talks. They can also attend at the Lincoln School. So that'll be happening during the day. And it's really a testament to Brookline and a great event. The event that we're hosting on Saturday night is sort of a continuation of that. One of the big, the common themes among TEDx is not only about the presentations, but it's about the people it brings together. And so the TEDx party on Saturday evening is an opportunity for people to network and to connect and to talk about ideas. And so we're proud to be able to host that for this community. The teen involvement in that evening, there will be some teen volunteers that will be in T-shirts that will mark them as volunteers. But it's not an event promoted for youth. There will be some youth there, though, during the course of the event. In terms of the other question, part of our, this has been an issue that we've wrestled with, and the plan that we have come up with is that we will rent the teen center out one weekend night per month as part of an ability to generate revenue. And we think that balances with our mission and vision of serving teens and not shutting down frequently. But at the same time, we need to be able to cover our costs and to be able to generate revenue towards funding the Teen Center for continued sustainability.
Okay. Questions for Mr. Cooney? Yes, Selectman Daley.
No, I just want to say, I know you've got people coming to serve who are with Jasper White's Summer Shack and they're tip certified, but you
Correct.
need to stress to them, if there are young people around, that they have to be very diligent about
Yes.
requiring that identification when they're
Agreed.
serving.
Yes, absolutely agreed. And that's what we'll be identifying our teens too,
Yeah,
so it'll
and,
make it even easier.
I think the question was a little bit more on this, is this a trend? Are there going to be adult events at the teen center? Information, I think, reasonable for you to offer us an explanation. TEDx
Absolutely.
obviously is a very special event, and we're very proud to have it coming to Brookline. So, I'm delighted that you're able to participate in it. It was really more a teen center
Absolutely.
mission and purpose and need to raise revenues.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
right.
And really minimizing the impact. We will be very judicious about how we do that, and we think the sort of the once-a-month model sort of makes sense.
Okay. Then I will move that we grant a temporary wine and malt beverages license to the Brookline Teen Center in connection with a TEDx event, Velocity event, to be held on November 16th from 7 to 9 p.m. at 40 Aspinwall Avenue. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
You two switch sides, I won't do that anymore. And the chair votes aye. Thank you very much,
Thank you.
and good luck.
Thank you.
And then we have temporary license for the Lars Anderson Auto Museum. I'm going to move a permit to serve alcoholic beverages, non-sales on town property for events on November 16th, November 18th, November 28th, and December 13th. All in favor?
There's
The
J is
23rd.
the 23rd, the item above.
Oh, sorry, and an additional one on November 23rd. All right. moving both items. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Benka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
Before we move on to the regular calendar, I note that Ms. Bruton is in the back of the room, and I just wonder if we could hear a little bit more about First Light.
Yes. Do you want to? We announced that it was on the 21st, but we didn't have enough information to tell all the details, and it looks like you've brought... Oh dear, are you going to perform?
No, definitely not. I know that you really just wanted toys. So Kara Bruton from the Economic Development Division of the Planning Department. I'm going to give you the free handout toys.
Oh,
We
yes,
love our
yes,
toys.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, these are good.
The purple one's mine. No, the purple one's mine. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
I want the green
Yeah.
one.
No, I want the green one.
All right, so we're
now
now
that we
very
have-
much in the mood.
Yeah, now that nobody's paying attention, the event is Thursday, November 21st from 5 to 8 p.m. There's lots of our favorite performers, throughout town. Throughout town, including the Brookline Senior Center Chorus and, a lot of people that we see every year. This is our 17th year. We have website is where you can find out all the events that are online right now. It's www.firstlightbrookline.com. And highlight for this year is we have Company One performing a piece called Articulation at the Arcade Building, beginning at 5:30 p.m. They were named in 2013 as the best theater company by Improper Bostonian. We're excited to have them as our kind of main and different event. Their mission is to change the face of Boston theater by uniting the city's diverse communities through innovative, socially provocative performance and developing civically engaged artists. So,
And where will they be? I
At
was
the
playing
arcade?
with my toy.
I know. So the group is called Company One. They're going to be playing, or doing their theater piece at 5:30 p.m. at the Arcade Building in
Okay.
Coolidge Corner. So that should be a fun, different thing for this year. And there's also a photography contest. This is the second year we've done it. Gene Stringham won last year. This year we have several entries already up on the town's Facebook page. You can go and vote. It's just whichever photo gets the most likes. So you go through the town's webpage to the Facebook page, and you can see the photos that are there about Brookline life. So I hope everybody can make it. And
So is there actually a kickoff event part of this? Or is it
There's
just,
not.
this is one where it's happening all over town at the same time?
happening all over town at the same time.
Okay.
So Brookline Village, Coolidge Corner, Washington Square are where most of the events are. And again, it's firstlightbrookline.com. has all the
On
events.
Wednesday, November 21st?
On
Thursday.
Thursday, November 21st.
Thursday.
I got the 21st part.
Thank you.
Okay, and thank you, Selectman Daley.
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that I was hearing today on the news how they expect more and more people to be shopping online this year. And this event is, it's a fun event, but it's also, to sort of kick off the shopping season and benefit our local businesses by getting people out to shop locally, because if you appreciate those local stores in your neighborhood, you've got to patronize them if you want them to stay in business.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, and I'm so glad you were able to give us visual aids. All right, next item is a building department personnel item. And I gather this is sort of a good news, bad news story, Commissioner.
Yes, good evening. Yes, I've got a vacant position, a local inspector. He's been there, Mark Robideau, for approximately a year. He accepted a job with the town of Southborough as their building commissioner, so I'm looking to fill that position.
So you have to be careful if you want to keep these folks, that they're not heisted off by other people needing building commissioners, right?
Exactly, yes, he's very good, so I
Yeah.
wish him good
All right,
luck.
I'm sorry to lose him, and I certainly hope you can find an equally qualified replacement. Any questions for Mr. Bennett?
Dan,
Then-
we're going to be taking steps to make sure we get a diverse pool of applicants for this.
Yes, we'll be following the HR process, and we will have them sitting in on the interviews, and reviewing the applications with us and seeking advertisements in some of our local inspectors associations to broaden the pool of applicants, and any other opportunities that they find that would put the word out to more diverse applicants. We're willing to work with them on that, yes.
Very good, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, I move that we authorize filling of a vacancy in the position of building inspector in the building department. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Binka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And then Commissioner Papasturgeon, I think you too have another change in your staff.
I do, thank you. Good evening, members of the board. The item before you is for authorization to hire 2 water pipe laborers in the Water and Sewer Division. Both of these vacancies were created by promotions, internal promotions. We're always happy when we can promote our folks internally to better positions. These are entry-level positions, ones that we generally fill by outside hire. And as you can imagine, the position of pipe layer has all the duties and responsibilities that goes with, of course, the repair and maintenance of water mains, water services, hydrants, valves, sewers and drains, catch basins, manholes, all that type of stuff. Very hard-working position, one that we really look forward to filling, especially before the winter.
Okay. Any questions for the commissioner?
No questions.
Then I move that we authorize filling of 2 vacancies in the position of water pipe layer laborer in the Water Sewer Division of Public Works. All in favor, please say aye. Selectman Daley?
Aye.
Selectman Binka?
Aye.
Selectman Goldstein?
Aye.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Aye.
Chair votes aye.
If you
And
could
do
also
you-
indulge me for a
Yes,
moment,
please.
Madam Chair. The board will recall that Phil Trainer, our Water and Sewer Director for nearly 4 years, retired in June after 44 years of service to the town of Brookline. On June 18th, you authorized the commencement of the process to fill the vacancy. The position was advertised over the summer. A screening committee was established by the town administrator, and interviews were conducted in October. And I will tell you that we had a lot of interest in this position from around the Commonwealth and from around other areas of the country as well. A successful candidate was presented and approved by the town administrator in November. After this long process, it is my pleasure to introduce Fred Russell. Fred is here with us tonight as our soon-to-be Director of Water and Sewer for the town of Brookline. Fred will be starting on December 1st. A little bit of background about Fred. Fred served for over 14 years in the city of Woburn as the city engineer and the superintendent of public works for the city of Woburn. And for the past 7 years has been the director of utilities for our neighbors to the west, the city of Newton. He oversaw all the functions, or currently oversees all the functions of water distribution, sanitary sewers, and storm drainage for the city of Newton. Their utilities system is about twice the size of ours. Not as good as ours, of course, but probably twice the size. Fred has a bachelor's degree in civil engineering, is registered as a professional engineer, and holds both water and wastewater licenses with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So tonight I ask that you join me in welcoming him as our newest employee to the Department of Public Works, Fred Russell.
Well, welcome, and you are truly fortunate that I think the great dig on Beacon Street for the MWRA is probably finished, so you'll have an easier introduction to Brookline, I hope.
Well, and also in working for Mr. Papasturgeon, you will have a boss who is very, very interested in water and sewer issues.
That's for sure. A good mentor, actually, if I could say so. So, we look forward to seeing you in December, and in the meantime, we'll keep our water mains together intact, right, Commissioner?
Yes, we will.
We'll take good care of them, okay?
Yes, we will. Thank you.
Thanks very much, and welcome to Brookline.
Welcome, Mr. Russell.
Good job.
All right, now we have a couple of interviews for the Human Relations Youth Resources Commission. And I'm just going to go down the list in the order they're printed on our calendar. So is Ms. Kelly Race here? Oh, good. Was afraid you'd be buried in the middle back there. Welcome.
Thank you.
We appreciate your interest in this. And I just want to start off by saying that we have a number of candidates that we'll be interviewing in the future, so it'll be a little while until we'll be able to make our final decisions. So tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're interested in this appointment.
Okay. I have a human resources background, so that's my particular interest in the group. I had originally applied to be on the ad hoc committee for diversity, inclusion, and affirmative action, and that's when I had originally met Nancy. That committee was already filled, so had kind of, I guess, expressed my interest if there were future opportunities, and looking at what the commission, I guess, the focus of it at the current time, particularly around increasing the diversity within the town and addressing some of the affirmative action issues are my particular interest. My background is in human resources. I have an undergraduate degree in personnel and industrial relations, a master's degree in industrial and labor relations, and about 25 years of experience. My most recent position was with Reebok. I worked for Reebok for about 4 years. I worked for Gillette for about 10 years in the director of human resources positions. So I have been responsible for developing affirmative action plans, have certainly been responsible for a lot of hiring, generating diverse candidate pools, and ensuring that managers are aware of what the objectives and goals of the organizations are towards diversity, both in the recruitment and the retention of diverse candidates.
Great.
Yeah, well, and I can say that Kelly has attended several of the meetings of my diversity, our
Good to
diversity
know.
committee, so she's got some idea, I think, of, that we're working on that bylaw, and there may be, or will be changes and
Well, and you're actually making my question, which I've been asking each candidate, but I will sort of pro forma, since I know you've gone to some of those meetings. You do understand then that our bylaw is currently under review and may be changed,
Yep.
but are you familiar with the bylaw as it currently exists? The Human Relations Bylaw?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions for Ms. Rice? Yes, Selectman Goldstein.
Thanks. And thank you very much for putting your name out there to volunteer. You might have heard me a moment ago when we were talking to one of our department heads about a new position and asking to assure us that we're seeking the most diverse candidate pool. And it seems that's right in your wheelhouse.
Yes.
What kinds of things should we make sure that we're doing to assure that we're getting a diverse candidate pool, especially at higher management positions?
Mhm. Well, first is looking at the recruitment. I mean, first thing I think is looking at the town's website and looking at the job opportunities. So making sure that we're advertising all of the positions. I was looking at the website today and saw that there are 4 positions that are currently listed. The most recent was posted in May of this year, so it's surprising to me that there seem to be no current openings in the town of Brookline right now. And all of those 4 positions have actually closed. I think 3 of them were posted in March, 1 of them posted in May. All of them say that they're closed. So what I was going to do was look at what the process was for applying. I have made the suggestion already. I've spoken with Sandra DeBow about making sure that we have an application within the town so that everybody is supplying the same information, that you're not always relying on resumes, that resumes are not completely reliable. There should be something that someone signs off on and says that they verify that this information is accurate and they're not fudging any of their credentials or expertise in that. And then including an EEO survey right with the application. I've seen in some of the previous notes of the commission saying that I think the town mails out a card to applicants afterward and has difficulty in getting those returned. So I think if we don't even know if people fall into a category for consideration for affirmative action, how do you make any headway in that? So the first thing is having that information. And then I think just looking at the other one, making sure that it's on the town website, I would suggest that we use other resources such as LinkedIn and other recruiting channels, trying to, again, fish where the fish are in looking for candidates.
Thank you.
Selectman Bingham?
If you send out the EO survey with the application or make that part of the application process, that is voluntary, is it not?
Absolutely,
It
it
has
is.
to be voluntary.
Yes, it is
Yeah.
voluntary.
Yeah.
But making it just simply a part of it, usually if it's a paper application, that's something that can be separated immediately. If it's an electronic application, then there's ways of also separating that. But it's, I think, best to get all of that information all together.
Yeah, I mean, I would think you would get clearly a much higher response rate if somebody is looking at it at the time they're doing their application.
That's right.
Right, okay.
Other questions? No? Yes, Selectman Daley?
Yeah, I've spoken to several of our current employees that might fall into a protected class, but that prefer not to identify themselves in that way. Feeling like, I got my job on the merits, why should I have to identify myself as within a protected class? I don't know, what are your feelings about that?
I think that's a very personal, decision for somebody on whether or not they do want to identify themselves. Sometimes people are, and just as Mr. Benka said, you need to make that voluntary, because some people are suspicious of that, where, sometimes people know that that may help them and want to be able to indicate their protected class or their status. And in other cases, people definitely would shy away from that. And I don't think that you can say that it's absolutely one or the other. There are very different opinions on that and very individual opinions.
Other questions for Ms. Rice? Thank you very much, and I'll just observe that you have noted something that I'm very aware of, and that is we don't have a lot of turnover. So you were looking to sort of do some research in positions and.
We also have a hiring freeze on
Yeah,
currently.
well, that's an issue
We
too.
heard, we heard that there are 3 positions that are going, that
We
have
just
gotten
authorized
approved,
3,
so-
that's right.
They'll
So
say,
we hope
we don't
to
have a
see
lot
those
of,
on the website.
we don't have a lot of turnover among our employees, though on this board, we have
No.
had turnover.
Right. Anyway, thanks very much, and it'll be several weeks, I think, before you'll hear from us.
Okay, thank you very much.
Next is Arthur Snyder.
Good evening.
Good evening. Tell us a little bit about why you're interested in applying for the Human Relations Commission.
Sure. I value diversity. As a town meeting member and a lifelong resident of Brookline, I have followed closely the debate and the discussions around this commission, and I think that my skill set could be a significant benefit to this commission. I am a lawyer. I am a trained mediator. I have worked in difficult situations as I hope to that this commission, in whatever form it ends up taking, works to help diversify this town and this town's workforce, which I think would be an extraordinary benefit. I feel very lucky to have come from a school system in this town that was very diverse, and I look forward to the town employees, when appropriate, having that amount of diversity. And I think that having that experience and working with the different personalities and also being able to look at it for the potential legal issues involved. I was a former assistant district attorney. I recognize that there are times when we need to, when everything we want to know or everything we want to do in a group needs to be somewhat curtailed because of whatever appropriate laws are in effect. And I think I have the right personality and temperament to help achieve the goals of this group, help diversify the town workforce, and help keep people focused on a common goal.
I'll ask you my general question then. Are you familiar with the current bylaw and
I am.
aware that it's under review?
I am.
Okay. Selectman Daley?
Yeah, so you mentioned a couple times the town's workforce, and I know there's some current members of the Human Relations Commission that are very focused on the town's workforce, but that isn't the only charge of that commission. There are some other areas that they are supposed to be working in. Are you sort of familiar with that?
I'm not sure if I am. I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to.
Well, for instance, and we are under, the bylaw is under review, and we're going to probably present a new version to town meeting in the spring in a revised bylaw. So, it's all a little bit in flux. But the current bylaw has a section of dealing with fair housing issues. And it isn't something that the current commission has been working on, but it is in their bylaw and in their purview under their current.
Well, very good. Well, I look forward to getting some direction as to what the new commission, what our charge will be, and whether it's diversity issues in housing or employment or in any way that the benefits of diversity can help our community. I look forward to working with people to help achieve.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Mr. Snyder?
I know Mr. Snyder's background, so usually I ask about
Okay.
background
All right.
questions, so I'm
All
going
right.
to pass on this one.
Then I'll just repeat what I've said. We have another batch of interviews to do next week's town meeting, so this will not we won't be able to make appointments right away. But you will hear from us, and we
Thank you.
very much appreciate your interest.
Thank you.
you. Brian Miles?
Good evening.
Good evening and welcome. I know you've heard, but I'm going to go through it again. We're very interested in hearing something about your own background and why you're interested in joining the Human Relations Commission.
I've been living in Brookline for 33 years, came here to do graduate work. We have 6 children, all are now grown, and all went through the Brookline school system. At one point, there were 5 in Lawrence School. At one time, that's
Wow.
kind of
If you were a new resident, I'd say you're contributing to our crowding problem, but
Well-
clearly you're not anymore.
Well, while I was here, and working on my doctorate, we had 2 children. And the second one was a real surprise. It was a real surprise. 8 years after, we had intended to do all these things together, my wife and I. And that sort of got shortchanged, but we had a beautiful surprise in the young son, Watashki. So we've gone through, like I said, in the earlier days, and coming here, and this lends itself to the question of, why would I want to get on here? I've seen the Brookline go through changes, and we've been a part of those changes. I mean, we have a much more culturally diverse population today than when I moved here 33 years ago. When you go down to, I live right down the street from Lawrence, from Lawrence Park School, and the park there. And when you go out there, you see really culturally diverse, kids at all ages. Which is, you go through, and after having 6 kids, we have 7 grandchildren. So to say that we like kids is, putting it mildly. My wife, I'll give you a little anecdote. My wife, one time I was laying on the couch, and we had a wooden armrest, and the kids were just jumping all over me and everything. And she asked me, she says, "How can you sleep through all this noise?" And one was behind my legs, one was sitting on me, and one pulled the pillow off from under my head and banged my head. And I just said, "But it's my noise." And if I didn't like children, then I wouldn't. But I've also been very involved, which lends itself in terms of on the youth side. I've been involved with Head Start, a very strong believer in Head Start and what it does, and having parents involved, very involved with the education. And my background has to do with a lot to do with Indian communities. I'm Native American, And I've been on policy, I've gone from grassroots to doing, being on national boards, regional boards, councils, committees. Have worked in an environment where consensus is really important. Because we have very politically, as you have very, move through, you run on the, and very professionally move through. When we have the community there and a lot of the people are related, and some of the issues are very emotional issues. So some of the meetings aren't as quiet as this, is putting it mildly. So which brings you to two things. 2 points. One is that you have to be aware of the issues that are in front of you. 2 is to do it in a win-win situation as opposed to identification of issues. Make sure that you include people's issues. And then look at it doing a win-win as opposed to a win-lose situation. When you do the win-lose, don't forget that they're going to come back at some point and they're going to carry it. And so that sometimes in some communities has prevented them from moving forward. In other communities, they've dealt with that issue and are able to move forward. So I've worked with tribes and Indian organizations all over the country. I worked in the Federal Regional Council, I was on the Federal Regional Council Indian Task Force, and we dealt with the tribes and Indian organizations in New England. We had to get along with, in terms of being able to work with the federal representatives and then the 9 federal agencies within New England. On the regional council. So doing that and working with through tribes and working with non-native populations. When you develop policies and going in, and one tribe, and I will not mention the tribe, when I went in and looked at, and what I offered is that when I looked at their constitution was in the early stages of development, and they had folks come from a prestigious school come in and develop this constitution. And after reading the constitution, I said, this is not a neatness of fit. This is culturally, this is not who these people are. So I think in that, bringing that sense of being able to look at a set of policies and say whether or not those policies, there's a neatness of fit. And if not, what needs to be done to make that work. And because again, you want to move forward, you want to deal with the issues, but you want to deal with them in such a way that you don't leave bad taste in people's mouths. On my own tribe, we had a Constitution Convention, I spearheaded it. 97% took a year and a half to develop the Constitution. 97% of the people voted in the affirmative to adopt a Constitution. That's unheard of in the Indian country. And why? Because people's issues were included. We did it with respect. There were some terrific discussions. When we got through, when we came back, we left, we had generations represented and major families represented on the Constitution Convention Committee. So those things were included. So when we walked away, we felt good. And we felt like we had been respected, our opinions had been included, and our issues were on the table and were being dealt with. And it dealt with the same thing in terms of strategic planning. It worked in terms of between Indian Health Service and tribes, and having to deal with issues, and then bringing in terms of the viewpoints in terms of Indian Health Service, and matching up those in terms of what areas can we win on, as opposed to what are the critical issues here, and being able to work those so that, and put them in such a language and working with people that they were acceptable and minimal acceptable to everyone. So those were important. Those were important, very important items.
Have you any familiarity with our bylaw? And
Yes.
are you aware that it's under review at this time?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Okay.
Yes, I am familiar with the bylaw.
Questions? Yes, Selectman Benka?
Yeah, comment and then a couple of questions. Of all of the individuals that we've interviewed to this point, you are one of few, if not the only one, who's emphasized youth and that aspect of the Human Relations Youth Resources Commission's charge at the present time. Your resume really addresses your professional work. I'm wondering if you could, you mentioned Head Start. I wonder if there's other volunteer work that you'd like to advise us about.
I'll start with, I'll even continue with Head Start. I also did the startup for the Catawba Indian Nation down in South Carolina, and wrote the grant and had no intentions on being a director there. The job was to come in, do a community assessment, put an application together, and, go from there. Well, because it took the Fed so long to approve it, what happened was that the people who they had lined up got jobs elsewhere. They said, we can only wait so long. So a colleague of mine who had also been doing work with the tribe said, I know a guy, he can do this. He can get this up and running. And so in terms of working with the community again and working, doing the startup, I'll shorten to say, we wound up doing the training and doing all of it, developing the manuals, doing all the training and everything, and did it all just, because we were starting late, and in terms of, we had the deadline in terms of getting the doors, classroom doors open by September. Anyhow, in terms of doing it, at 6 months, when we had our first federal review, we were ahead of other startup programs that were 12 and 18 months. So in getting things done and making things happen. In terms of directly answering your question, in terms of what other activities, in terms of, well, when you look at Head Start, you have to involve the whole family. You look at it from that standpoint, and then tracking out, mapping out where they have to go. As far as doing other things, I've been involved with coaching kids, been involved in all kinds of, in sports activities, but also on the other level in dealing with kids, and especially in Indian communities. When you go to Indian communities, you have to deal with the youth. Because a lot of our problems begin, if you look at, on some reservations, the drug problem is just running rampant. Alcohol, start early. So when we turn around and go out, so you have to include them. So everywhere that I've gone, I've dealt with youth issues, because it's critical. You cannot separate them. You cannot, because again, when we're looking at a homogeneous group, what they are today, if they're not brought along, then what will the community be like in years from now?
Thank you.
Thank you. Selectman Daley?
Yeah, so you seem particularly well qualified, I must say, because of the youth thing. I noticed, too, you mentioned that you'd negotiated contracts with vendors and suppliers. The current bylaw says that the Human Relations Youth Resources Commission is supposed to look at our contracts and see if they're, being given out fairly and there's diversity and whatever. That part we're under discussion about whether that should stay in there, though, because in the interim, Massachusetts law has developed this very tightly prescribed set of
Procurement.
Yeah, regulations about exactly how we have to do our contracts and whatever.
There's always the formal contractual arrangements and bidding process and whatnot. There's always that, and then there's the informal. And I think before, you can look at this from two sides. One is Massachusetts coming out of it and will adhere to it. That this does not guarantee you diversity, in terms of dealing with your issue.
No, actually, Massachusetts law does.
No.
You have to have some.
What I'm saying is, how do you turn around and oversee that and make that work?
Yeah.
You have the law here, but
Yeah.
how do you operationalize that law in the town of Brookline?
Yeah.
And the last thing we want in the town of Brookline is something hitting the newspaper. Okay, that's the last thing we want. So we want to hit, meaning we want to hit something off, we want to be able to work with that to ensure that that happens, but do it in such a manner that it doesn't become overly rigorous and overly bureaucratic. And I think in terms of looking at that, I think that, so from that standpoint, I think it should remain here, okay? Because in terms of being able to look at that, because the first thing that's gonna happen is, somebody's gonna say, you know, Brookline being what it is, yeah, they got it on the books, but we know what happens. And so, giving that a form and giving something where the oversight is being provided, and there's a culturally diverse group that's doing it, that charge cannot be easily made. And there can be a remedy for that, a process in which that, and so I'm saying that.
Yeah. Because it's been my contention that, that since we almost always have to take the low bidder under Massachusetts law, and they have to have, you know, some minority component, the big contracts anyway, have to have some minority or you know, diversity kind of component in them. And so my feeling is sort of that this is a little bit of a distraction for the Human Relations Youth Resources Commission, that, you know, they have not actually been active in that area. They haven't been doing anything in that area for many, many years. And why have it in the bylaw if it's kind of distracting from the core mission?
Okay,
That's,
I can be the devil's advocate, say, well, why haven't they been doing it? They're not doing the job.
I don't want to cut you short, Mr. Miles,
Okay.
but we have at least one more interview we have to.
okay. Well, no, I was egging him on. so
Yeah, I got that, Anyway, thank you very, very much. We really appreciate your interest. Oh, yes, Selectman Benka.
Look, I apologize to people who are sitting out there, but I really.
Can't resist.
I know. I would just like to use the fact that I'm sitting up here as an opportunity to educate myself. Your resume uses the term First Nations and also the term Native.
Right.
Is there a distinction drawn between them?
First Nations is usually applied in Canada.
Okay.
The natives of there apply, and again, we can get into the Indian.
No, okay.
You know, that whole thing. And then my way of dealing with that, how do you refer to yourself in your own language? We don't have words for Indians, natives, so when you start getting hung up in you know, on the semantics, you know, fine, that's what you want. But when you turn around, if you can speak your language, and you turn around and refer to yourself, you know, and usually in most languages, most Indian languages, it's referred to themselves as a people or some sort of people. It's very descriptive. So yes, and natives here, and natives can be on both sides. That's acceptable. That is the, you know, politically correct. And the second part of that is the First Nations is specifically used. They use that in Canada.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for your interest. And let's see, Mr. Naro, Anthony Naro, one more candidate? Mr. Anthony Naro? Maybe I'm mispronouncing it. Anthony Naro? Okay. Well, I hope we didn't have him wait too long. Maybe he'll be able to reschedule. All right, then, that takes care of our interviews for the evening. We're going to move on to our public hearing on the 40B proposal at Hancock Village. And I'm just going to do a quick sort of overview, and then we'll have some presentations, comments from some of our departments, and also hear from neighbors. And all of this is an opportunity to comment on this proposal that has been made for 192 housing units, of which 39 will be affordable, under the state's Chapter 40B comprehensive permit process. And using 40B calculations for the state's subsidized housing inventory total, all 192 units, even though only 39 are affordable, will be counted toward our subsidized inventory. This proposal was submitted to Mass Development, which is a subsidizing agency authorized under state statute to review projects for eligibility for a funding subsidy, in this case, tax-exempt bond financing. This is the second proposal that was submitted by Chestnut Hill Realty. The first one was withdrawn suddenly in February, and a second proposal submitted in August. Mass Development issued a letter of eligibility on October 8th. The next step in the process is for the applicant to submit the project to the Brookline Zoning Board of Appeals for a comprehensive permit. This hearing is intended to solicit comment on local concerns from town departments and from the public on the project and on its impacts. And we're going to begin with an overview from our planning director, Ms. Allison Steinfeld, who has joined us. Welcome, Allison. Thank you.
Thank you very much. By way of background, the town submitted a comprehensive response to the Chestnut Hill Realty's second proposal to Mass Development as part of what the state refers to as a site eligibility phase. In terms of the proposal's relationship to the site, the town acknowledged that the density was decreased from 271 to 192 units. Townhouses were reduced by half a story. The apartment building was reduced by a full story. But the changes did not address the town's substantive concerns. Chestnut Hill Realty is now proposing 13 instead of 12 buildings, and it has introduced 7 4-space garages, as well as more of 3 and 4 unit residences than the original proposal. It's added pavement, walls, and fill closer to the adjacent single-family homes. The proposal also undermines the Garden Village model concept, of which Hancock Village is a prototype. Hancock Village was expressly designed to separate pedestrian and vehicular traffic, afford residents with visual and physical access to adequate green space, and to create a community feeling. The proposed site plan that is before you on the screen essentially eliminates the green buffer space, which is a critical component of the village concept. The proposed use and site plan would effectively destroy the defining characteristics of Hancock Village by eliminating significant internal open space, degrading pedestrian circulation, introducing a 4-story building that will loom over its neighboring buildings, creating dead-end streets and excessive impervious surfaces, failing to orient the new buildings with the existing buildings, creating additional parking for units outside of the project boundaries, and undermining the sense of community. The loss of the green belt and the pudding stone outcroppings and the cutting of mature trees, as proposed by the applicant, would be detrimental not only to the historic and architectural integrity of this property, but also to the character of Hancock Village and the surrounding neighborhood. The proximity of the proposed development to the wetlands within the horse sanctuary raises issues of water quality. Furthermore, the increase in paved surfaces and the raised 4-foot-high grades relative to Beverly Road homes may adversely affect drainage of surface waters to the abutting properties. The fire department has identified significant traffic and safety issues related to vehicular access and response time. The town feels that we made a strong case to support a determination that the site is not conducive to the proposed development. But the site eligibility phase is somewhat of a misnomer in that while it should address the extent to which the proposed development is consistent with and supportive of the site itself, it also includes what the state refers to as previous municipal actions. Specifically, as part of the state's determination of the eligibility of a site, it addresses the extent to which a municipality has sought to meet affordable housing goals. I would suggest that the town has aggressively sought to increase both the quantity and quality of affordable housing. It has done that through inclusionary zoning, and investment of public funds, including extensive and significant local resources. While the town should be justifiably proud of its past actions to expand and support affordable housing, the state has maintained that that is not enough, and it has incorporated that negative assessment into its site eligibility determination. So despite the compelling arguments by the town, as well as those by the Neighborhood Conservation District Commission, abutters, and affordable housing advocates, Mass Development has determined that the site is appropriate for the proposed development, and it's cleared the path for the developer to submit a comprehensive permit to our Zoning Board of Appeals. We anticipate that that permit will be applied for very shortly. I should note that the town's response was a collaborative effort, and there are several department heads available here tonight to respond to any questions you may have. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Steinfeld. And I'd just like to acknowledge that Representative Ed Coppinger, who represents the Hancock Village part of Brookline, has joined us. And if you'd like to come in, folks who are standing in the background, not that anybody ever likes to sit in the front row, but there are at least, I can see several seats up here if you'd like to not be standing. And moving on, the next person I'm going to ask is Roger Blood, who chairs our Housing Advisory Board, and he's going to talk to us a bit about our commitment to affordable housing.
Good evening. I am Roger Blood, still chair of the Housing Advisory Board. As Ms. Steinfeld just mentioned, in promoting its current plan to impose a Chapter 40B development at Hancock Village, Chestnut Hill Realty, the developer of the site, in its recent correspondence was rather dismissive of the town's record on affordable housing, when in fact Brookline has a remarkable record of promoting, creating, and preserving affordable housing despite some daunting impediments, both physical and financial. Under Brookline's current and long-standing policy regarding affordable housing, all areas and neighborhoods of the town are considered eligible for the creation of affordable housing, including the allocation of all resources available to the town for the purposes of implementing this inclusive policy. The town's neighborhoods are unusually diverse in terms of density, accessibility, and other features, and this diversity needs to be recognized when determining what are suitable characteristics of any proposed affordable housing in order for it to be reasonably compatible with its immediate surroundings. In this regard, the Housing Advisory Board and other town officials have recognized for many years the unusual, if not unique, opportunity that Hancock Village might offer for providing a really significant boost to the town's affordable housing inventory. Our record shows that affordable housing production need not be incompatible with sound planning objectives, environmental concerns, or compatibility with the surrounding community. In fact, demonstrated and ongoing community support for affordable housing in our town rests upon this vital premise. Whether under the auspices of Chapter 40B or otherwise, we believe that a significant number of affordable units can be provided as part of a good infill development at Hancock Village without running afoul of other legitimate planning and design concerns raised by the current proposal. Such legitimate concerns do not include opposition to affordable housing per se. In that regard, HAB members have not encountered any community or neighborhood opposition to affordable housing at Hancock Village, or for that matter, to affordable housing anywhere in Brookline. To the extent that Chapter 40B was designed to overcome the opposition of many Massachusetts communities to affordable housing, including so-called exclusionary or snob zoning, Brookline is most emphatically not one of those communities and never has been. On the contrary, inclusionary zoning for affordable housing in Brookline is one of several ongoing initiatives that underpin the town's commitment to affordable housing and its production of same. Applying a 15% standard for affordable housing units in proposed projects of 6 units or more, the town's inclusionary zoning has produced over 100 deed-restricted affordable units in 20 separate properties, including 2 currently in the pipeline. Beyond just inclusionary zoning, evidence of the town's ongoing commitment to affordable housing also includes the following. First of all, a municipal-level affordable housing trust with funding from both our inclusionary zoning bylaw and periodic allocations from the town's free cash account, including over $500,000 in this current fiscal year. This trust fund has raised over $11 million of local funding for the production and preservation of the town's affordable housing. In allocating its limited affordable housing resources to local projects, the Commonwealth looks favorably on communities such as Brookline, and there are a few, that commit significant amounts of their own funding in order to make proposed affordable housing projects financially feasible. The town's trust funds have been deployed to promote affordable housing units in a very wide range of new and renovated properties, including several lodging houses containing 100% affordable housing for the working poor and low-income residents. Next, the town has a dedicated affordable housing staff within the town's planning department of 3 full-time employees. Next, we have a well-run and proactive public housing authority. The BHA, in addition to owning and managing over 900 low-income rental units in town, administers over 300 Section 8 rental units that are also sited in Brookline. The Housing Authority also recently formed a nonprofit housing development corporation that's partnering with the town to construct 32 new low-income rental housing units. Finally, and this is an item that's often overlooked as far as the town's commitment of resources, our town's government has demonstrated a willingness to recycle valuable municipally owned properties for the purpose of creating affordable housing, including where the development of only high-end housing would produce far more tax revenues for the town. Brookline recently provided 5 acres of very highly valued land atop Fisher Hill, and with neighborhood collaboration was able to create an affordable housing development, Olmsted Hill, with over 70% of its total 34 units being permanently affordable. Finally, the town's commitment of substantial financial, human, and political resources to work with the Archdiocese of Boston in creating a widely acclaimed friendly 40B project on the site of the St. Aidan's Catholic Church. The result was not only the preservation of a valued historic edifice, but 59 new housing units, of which over 60% are permanently affordable. These percentages, 100%, 70%, 60%, where the town is committed to do something, are notable, particularly because Chapter 40B only allocates 20 or 25% for a so-called affordable housing project. Now, with regard to the Hancock Village development submission, Chestnut Hill Realty cited the following 2 facts as evidence that Brookline has failed to demonstrate either commitment or results to affordable housing. First, that Brookline's affordable housing inventory at just over 8% of the town's total housing stock is less than the town's 10% threshold limit or standard. Most of the 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts have nowhere near Brookline's 8% level. And second, the town's annual production of new affordable housing, according to Chestnut Hill Realty, averaging nearly 25 units a year over the past decade, is less than the 132 units which the Commonwealth would say the town would have to produce every year in order not to be subject to Chapter 40B under its temporary safe harbor standards. This is not a valid characterization of Brookline's position and its record on affordable housing. If the Commonwealth's decision to approve or disapprove the current Chestnut Hill Realty plan at Hancock Village is influenced at all by Brookline's record with regard to affordable housing, it should be based upon a positive and not a negative reading of what the town has done and is doing to promote affordable housing within our boundaries. State officials, including the DHCD, the Commonwealth's housing agency, have recognized both Brookline's commitment and its results regarding affordable housing on a number of occasions over recent years. Now, all of the above and more has been achieved in Brookline in the face of two enormous challenges relative to most other communities in the Commonwealth. The first is land availability, or lack thereof. Extremely limited land availability for creating affordable housing is a result of Brookline being physically surrounded by the city of Boston and largely built out. Brookline simply has very little land available for development that does not entail the demolition of valuable existing buildings and often the relocation of existing occupants. Second, land economics. Brookline's uniquely central location, combined with its reputation for having a well-run municipal government and excellent town and school services, has driven the value of all land in Brookline to astronomical levels. This otherwise favorable economic environment translates into a huge affordability gap when it comes to bridging the difference between market rate housing in town and units that are affordable for low and moderate income households. In fact, the combined subsidies required to bridge this gap and to produce a single affordable housing unit in town requires over $350,000 of combined resources. Just combine that with the fact that to get from 8% to 10%, we would have to produce over 500 more affordable units with that kind of an affordability gap of $350,000 per unit. So what should we conclude from all of this? On the one hand, we should all recognize that Hancock Village presents the town with a unique site and a unique opportunity to reduce the distance between our current 8% affordable level and the town's and the Commonwealth's 10% benchmark. On the other hand, Brookline's compelling affordable housing story, commitment, accomplishment, and challenges, all three, deserve consideration by 40B authorities as they weigh whether to impose on the town a project plan from Chestnut Hill Realty that remains flawed and intrusive in the eyes of our town officials, much more of which you're going to hear about shortly, and town officials who are without exception demonstrably pro-affordable housing. It's not just the Housing Advisory Board in this town that's pro-affordable housing by a long shot. My limited time in speaking before you tonight does not permit a full and detailed account of all that the town has done on affordable housing and is doing to advance it. There's an ample further recitation of these things in the August 29th letter from Selectman DeWitt to Mr. Fracazzo at Mass Development, and much further detail on this subject is readily available to anyone in town on the town's website, the Housing Division of the Planning Department. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're going to ask questions while we have Mr. Blood, or shall we move on and hear? Shall we carry on? Okay, thank you. Mr. Bell from the Hancock Village Neighborhood Conservation District Commission.
Good evening. Paul Bell, Chairperson of the Neighborhood Conservation District Commission. I first want to say that we responded to this 40B application in our capacity as Neighborhood Conservation District Commission, and we're fortunate, I think, as a town to have on the commission some very skilled and knowledgeable professionals in urban design, architecture. We also had people on there that live in the area and know what it's like to experience Hancock Village, right, as a residential neighbor. And we have myself, an attorney who's comfortable reading and understanding the 40B regulations about how we're supposed to look at this application in the context of the proposal. And so that's what we did, and we looked at it, looking very carefully and thoughtfully at the guidelines in the CMR regulations about the conceptual site plan, the building massing, the topography, the environmental resources, and particularly the integration into the existing development patterns, how consistent what they proposed is with what's there now. Hancock Village was built right after World War II. The initial layout was by Olmsted, and that inspires and really is the foundation of the design. And it was about creating a place where people could come a suburban kind of home living, neighborhood living, very different from urban apartment flat type living, someplace where you could drive home and arrive, park your car, get out, go onto a sidewalk, go through a yard, up some steps and through your front door. You could go out your back door and experience a backyard. And then beyond a backyard, you could see, Pudding Stone, you can see trees, you can see an outside. And that's the kind of experience that Hancock Village is intended to create. It's low-lying, 2 stories, and it was also designed to provide all of this affordably for people coming home, veterans coming home from World War II, people who, were trying to get back on their feet after the Depression and the recovery of World War II. So that's what inspired it. And then what we were struck by was just completely how incongruous what they proposed was, particularly this high-rise, monolithic, double-loaded corridor apartment type structure. That's really the defining feature of the proposal that just kind of comes down from outer space and lands in this development and just doesn't fit. And so in the context of the regulations about how we're supposed to sort of look at this proposal and how does it fit with what's there, we saw that it couldn't be more incongruous. It's almost like proposing a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in downtown Crossing. That's sort of how it struck us. So there was that, particularly the high-rise apartment building. Also, there was this very defining park-like recreational area that borders Beverly and Russet Road, and they, proposed filling that in with housing. That's like one of the most defining features of how people experience life at Hancock Village. It's used for all sorts of outdoor recreational activities, and just not appropriate to take it away, we thought. So those were some of the really important ways that we felt it didn't respond to the existing development. Traffic patterns don't flow the same way. They're more like dead-end traffic patterns as opposed to flow-through traffic patterns. And people don't arrive home and go through their front door. They drive down into a parking garage, and they get in an elevator, and they go up to a corridor, and they walk down a corridor into an apartment. And that's a very different type of living. There's nothing wrong with that type of living. It's just that it's not consistent with what's here. So those were some of the strongest things that we came up with. We also prepared about a 10-page report to the initial proposal, and we prepared another 3 or 4-page or 5-page response to the second proposal after the first one was withdrawn. Those are both available to the town through the our planning department, our staff. And as this whole process moves forward, we're here to continue to try to provide our expertise to describe how we think it responds to how it should respond to Hancock Village.
Thank you very much. There are we're going to continue with other comments. I understand, let's see, there's the historic status of the property. Yes, Mr. Batchelor from the Preservation Commission.
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Jim Batchelor, and I'm the chair of the Preservation Commission. And I'll speak briefly about the, the historic aspects of this location. And I think that people understand, it has been mentioned, that it is considered historic, not only for the qualities and the things that I think everybody appreciates living there, but for the way it was laid out, the fact that it was laid out by Olmsted and other significant players in the City Beautiful Garden Village movement in this country. It was done at a time where this was considered very innovative, and today it still stands as a very complete and intact example of that. For these reasons, it has been designated as National Register eligible. And I think it's important to understand that this does set up some processes where, under certain conditions, there is a state review process and a federal review process. And some of this depends a little bit on how the financing and permitting of this is to be done, but there is another process which is out there, which is presumably to be complied with in some way. I think it's early at this time to know exactly how, but the fact that it has been designated as National Register eligible by both Brookline and Boston means that it has full standing and eligibility to be reviewed in that process. So I think we are expecting that that process will kick in if the conditions of funding and permitting so require. I don't think we know exactly how all that plays out at this time because there are things we don't know about the whole process, but this is anticipated and I expect will be part of the future of this. I think Paul has mentioned some of the other features, but I do think that it is fair to say that all of the characteristics which were important to this, including the way the residential units themselves are organized, the way the open spaces are organized, the way the traffic is organized, all of these things are being turned inside out by the approach that's being taken with this development plan.
Thank you, Mr. Batchelor. Mr. DeWitt, do you have something you want to add to the historic component?
Dennis DeWitt, member of the Neighborhood District Conservation District Commission, and a member of, but not speaking as a member of, the Mass Historical Commission. This National Register eligible project, and as Jim Batchelor said, that is, in terms of art, that's the same thing as being on the National Register, and has been, we've been so notified of that by MHC. That this is subject to a 40B is highly unusual. I've been able to identify 5 cases involving 40B properties, 4, including St. Aidan's, either started out or became friendly 40Bs. And all of those involved municipal funding, except for the Brookline example, it was CPA funding. And there was only one that was a comparable scale to Hancock Village, and that was in Northeastern at the Ames Shovel Works. Obviously, when you have a friendly 40B and there's town financing involved, then that is leverage that gives some advantage in terms of what the project will come out like. The state has an adverse impact review, as Jim Batchelor just mentioned, which mirrors the federal so-called Section 106 review, involving consultation to avoid, minimize, or mitigate any adverse effects. Projects that require funding, licenses, or permits from any state agency should be reviewed by MHC in compliance with MGL Chapter 9, Section 27C. That states that, and I'm quoting here, as early as possible in the planning process of a project undertaken by a state body or prior to the state's funding or licensing, in whole or in part, of a private project, the state body undertaking funding or licensing such project shall notify the Commission. The regulations that guide MHC's review are published in 950 CMR 71. It states in part, initially, state law does not give MHC veto authority over proposed developments, but does direct state bodies to adopt all prudent and feasible means to avoid damaging historic properties. It then goes on to state that a license, and remember we're talking about funding or licensing in the law, a license means a permit, determination, order, or other action, including the issuance of a lease, license, permit, certificate, variance, approval, or other entitlement for use granted by a state body. And then it defines a state body as any agency, executive office, department, board, commission, bureau, division, or authority of the Commonwealth established to serve a public purpose. The Housing Appeals Committee which in the end is the final reviewer of this process. Once the town's ZBA has opined on it and it has gone along to the state, the Housing Appeals Committee is part of the Department of Housing and Economic Development. DEHC takes the position and has consistently taken the position that 40B state approval process by the Housing Appeals Committee does not constitute a license. The DEHC thus stonewalls the process by not, as they say, checking the appropriate box on the environmental notification form. MHC only sees 40B projects if some other state's permitting agency triggers the ENF process. They want to dig a ditch or something else that requires notification, then MHC gets aware of it officially. MHC is on record as strongly disagreeing with DEHC's position on this matter. Normally, one state agency does not sue another to enforce compliance. Another party would have to do it, and if you can't sue, then you can't enforce the compliance. Mass Development is also a player in this, as we have seen. They review this process on the front end. If you go to their website, they present themselves as if they were a corporation, or as the British would say, a quango, quasi-governmental organization. But in fact, it is the Massachusetts Development Finance Agency, a public instrumentality, I'm quoting again, whose powers shall be deemed to be the performance of an essential governmental function. Its board is all governor's appointees, chaired by the Secretary of DEHC. In a court case, re Fort Devens, the judge deemed it a state agency. Might it not also be subject to court action to comply with the review process, or in fact to comply with the design review process component of what they are supposed to do in vetting this project, and not just the financing part of it? This is a question for others to answer. I have several lawyers in front of me, and I know several of them behind me here, and I assume they will take this matter up. Thank you.
Okay, is there someone who wants to speak for the Conservation Commission? Ms. Bowditch?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. I will be brief. I have no notes. The Conservation Commission has been involved in review of various proposals at the site for quite some time, as I'm sure you know, and as have many people here tonight, and you, of course, as well. I think we share the opinion of others who have spoken before me that there were many opportunities to develop this site in ways that would actually enhance the environment and, in fact, provide some benefits and improvements over existing conditions at the site. However, the proposed project that we have in front of us, in the opinion of the Commission, probably does not take advantage of all of those opportunities. We have a couple of different areas under our purview on the Commission. Jurisdictional issues, and in this case of a 40B development, that is strictly the State Wetlands Protection Act issues. A development like this does need to comply with state regulations under the Wetlands Protection Act. And obviously the proximity of the horse sanctuary, which was referred to earlier, and the buffer zone areas, some of the proposed development does fall under the jurisdiction of the Wetlands Protection Act, and therefore the development of the proposed development would certainly need to comply with those regulations. Stormwater management is clearly an important component of that. For a site like this, that's probably going to be the key factor, impervious surfaces and managing those in appropriate ways, obviously. In addition to our jurisdictional oversight, the Conservation Commission is obviously very involved in open space and develops the open space plan for the town of Brookline, works with the community on prioritizing open space needs for protection of unprotected open space and so on. And clearly there's a lot of open space impacts that this proposed project will have, and I think the combination of the impacts to some of the unusual environmental features, the pudding stone outcrops which have been mentioned, and obviously the buffer zone along Beverly and Russet Roads are clearly open space issues that we have identified and talked about for quite some time. As I said, going through the process, really the jurisdictional issues are going to be primarily those related to the Wetlands Protection Act. I think there are some existing infrastructure problems that have been identified by the town in the development that may also be a factor as this proposed development is moving forward. But I think the key issues really for the town are to think through as this project process, moves forward, to be aware of how this ties into both state-level environmental rules and also our town's open space needs and priorities that are fairly well articulated, and it's a shame to lose open space improvement opportunities when we have them.
Selectman Daley?
Yes, I have a question for Ms. Bowditch. We have heard from neighbors on Beverly and Russet Road that they already get a great deal of water runoff from this property into their backyards and flooding their basements. I'm not even sure it's all stormwater. We had some suggestion that there may be underground streams on the property. It seems to me that the latest plan is going to really exacerbate any of these problems that people have. And I just wonder if that's also your view, or if you can comment on that.
What I have seen so far in looking at the proposed plan is very conceptual, and there isn't really anything, any kind of level of detail that would be needed to address the questions that you're asking.
Well, my understanding, though, was that they were going to build up their side of the property line several feet, so that what we now call the buffer zone would actually be a couple of feet higher than the neighbor's property behind it. So, and that's what just, I'm not an expert as you are, but I thought that certainly looks to me like it's going to make water runoff problems a lot worse.
Well, state law won't allow that, and so it certainly will have to be designed in such a way to avoid, minimize, and mitigate those types of problems. And I assume there will be engineering solutions that will be proposed that will be designed to make sure there is no additional runoff from the site, to make sure that there's no additional volume of runoff going into the horse sanctuary. There will be, because this is part of the Charles River watershed and there are pollution limits that have been established by the state for both nutrients and for pathogens, that the site will have to be designed, at least the new parts of the site will have to be designed to meet those state standards. That's not a town standard, those are state standards. So things like no increase in off-site runoff volume, no increase in off-site pollution, those types of regulations are state requirements, and the site will have to demonstrate to the satisfaction of the State Department of Environmental Protection levels that they're meeting those requirements. And so the questions you're asking and the neighbors are asking are exactly the right questions. There's just no information yet available as to if they're going to do that, which I assume they will try to do, and how, and whether or not the proposed practices are going to meet those standards. And that's the level of detail that has to be developed in subsequent phases.
Selectman Waschinsky?
Yes, I don't know if you'd be the right person to ask, and if you aren't, I'll defer, but I'll ask the question. How does 40B intersect the Wetlands Protection Act? Does one trump the other?
No, all the requirements of the Wetlands Protection Act do have to be met under a 40B proposal. So it's only local, so Brookline, in addition to the Wetlands Protection Act, Brookline has a local wetlands bylaw, which is more protective than the state law. They would not need to comply with our local wetlands bylaw. They would not need to comply with our local stormwater ordinance, but they would need to comply with the state Wetlands Protection Act requirements.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ms. Bowditch.
Thank you.
Then I believe we have some representation from the school committee who might want to comment on the possible impact on our adjacent Baldwin School. No, sorry, Baker School. Why did I say Baldwin? Baker. A budding
First
Baker
letter
School.
B was correct. Good evening. Thank you, Madam Chairman, and good evening, Selectmen, and everyone else here. My name is Alan Morse, and I have the privilege of being the current chairman of our school committee. I'm here tonight to share with you some observations on how the proposed Hancock Village 40B project may impact our school system's existing expansion plan to accommodate the ongoing growth of our student body. Please understand that I am not here in any way advocating for or against the 40B proposal. My purpose is to clarify, well before the occupancy of any development at Hancock Village, that the school committee's proposed expansion plan, based on the work of the B-Space Committee and now before the Override Study Committee, might well have to be revised to account for significantly more students from this development, boosting estimates of the related operating and capital costs. A significant development at Hancock Village could affect both our K-8 system and our planning for Brookline High School, so I will speak to both. The proposed 40B project, as you've heard, the plans show 192 new apartment units, including 28 four-bedroom units, another 28 three-bedroom units, and 72 bedroom units, amongst others. While family-size units do typically raise our enrollments, it's important to point out that one-bedrooms and even studios recently have been known to house families. One-bedrooms, for example, frequently have another room, either an alcove or even a separate dining area that, in the experience of the public schools, will be used as a bedroom. So while we rely on the planning department to forecast the specific number of additional students any new construction may produce, it is clear that this number of new units, most built for larger families, will bring a significant influx of new children to our school system. The proposed development falls squarely within the Baker School's attendance district. Baker School now serves 754 students, approximately one-third of whom come from Hancock Village. It is a 4-section per grade school, and all its pre-K classes have been moved to rental space. At 139 square feet of building space per student, Baker is now the second most crowded K-8 school in our system. While the B-Space Committee noted in its report that both Baker and Heath have the capacity to add classrooms, whether through modular units or other expansion, should enrollments in South Brookline increase, the potential increases of this proposed development may easily require us to do much more, such as a substantial redistricting exercise, or a splitting Baker into 2 sections, excuse me, with a new school nearby to house the lower grades. Any of these options, premised on the need for more classrooms and common space, will bring considerable additional pressure to the operating and capital costs already facing us. Another concern is the potential impact of these additional students on the planning we are doing for Brookline High School. Right now, based on our current student enrollments, We forecast that by 2022, Brookline High School will have expanded from its current 1,800 students to 2,500 students. A 2,500 student high school is considered by many to be quite large, and skepticism has already been voiced as to whether the Brookline High School campus will be able to accommodate the increased traffic and parking required by that many more students and staff. An expanded Hancock Village may house some children already of high school age, but even more will move up through our system and enter high school later, along with our already other larger elementary classes. So ultimately, our 2,500 peak student estimate for our high school could be too low. We need to think carefully now about the prospect of even more students at Brookline High as a result, and that changes the conversation about how we will respond to the growth. In particular, it brings back the possibility of needing a second high school, an option B-Space did not endorse, but one that may have to be back on the table for consideration. It goes without saying at this point that any of these options for Brookline High School, even the expansion currently contemplated, come with a significant cost to the town and taxpayers. I raise all of this to be sure that you and the community understand the implications for even greater changes to our school system in the event that this proposal goes through as planned, and the greater costs it will represent. As I said at the outset, the school committee has no position on the development except to be clear with the community what it will mean for the public schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, let's move to some comments from neighborhood representatives. Is Dr. Pooh here? Oh, sorry, Mr. Zarillo, Planning Board. Didn't see you over in the peanut, buried there. Welcome.
Thank you. As you know, the Planning Board represents a design, has a design team that looks at projects and tries to understand how we can make projects better, what projects are doing, and how they can relate better to the community. One of the things that we do in terms of design and planning for a project like this is to actually look at problem recognition, understanding how to critique a project of this type, and looking at the design of this project and how it actually can be quantified in some manner. It's a process called elements, issues, and strategies. The elements of a site plan or the elements of a design are basically land use, building placement, circulation, open space, and amenities. And if you take those 5 elements and you understand that they define neighborhood character. And as we know, neighborhood character or community character is one of the things that we can look at in terms of adverse effect of what a 40B is, or what a 40B development looks like. So if community character is defined by elements, it's regulated by setbacks, height regulations, open space, landscape area, and density. And one thing that we can see from this plan is that the density is not evenly distributed. That in fact, together with the community, with trying to understand what the character of the existing Hancock Village is, you can see that what it's done is change the character of Hancock Village. It's changed the character in terms of, circulation, the building placement, open space. You can see that in the new development that's proposed, there is no open space, whereas the open space is intertwined with the existing development. So what are the issues? The issues can be defined as things that should enhance the character of the development, or things that would be in concert with the character of the development. For example, and these have been mentioned before, traffic. Traffic is circulation within the village itself. The idea of the parking changes and where the parking is, and the fact that the circulation is non-conforming in terms of the parking lots, where you actually drive through the parking lots to get to your destination. So you'd have to drive into and through a parking lot in order to get to the new development. So it's uneven density, it's uneven and poorly integrated with the existing open space system. And these are all characteristics that can be quantified and can be used as critiques for understanding elements, issues, and strategies. And so the end game is, what is the strategy? What is the strategy to deal with the community character? And that needs to be developed, because it's not expressed in the planning and design of this alternative that they have presented. So from our standpoint, planning board would look at what we need to do in order to define that character and understand how that development might change and become a different planning party and a different design in terms of dealing with the elements of character.
Thank you very much. Okay, Dr. Pu, I think you have to switch computers.
I'm Bill Pooh, town meeting member and also a member of Preserve Brookline. I'd like to thank the Selectmen for their continuing interest in this proposal and their work towards doing what's right for Brookline. So basically just an overview. I'm going to very briefly go over the history of this project. We've already heard some. I'm going to go really fast. Part of it is for some of the neighbors who may not have been so immersed in this project and may want to know what's behind this. And then I want to briefly go over why we think Brookline should do whatever it can to fight this proposal. And then I've brought with me Mark Bobrovsky, who's our lawyer, who will also has expertise in 40B and will then present some information about what can be done to combat a 40B. So we all know that this is Hancock Village. It has two areas that are, and this is the main area that will be developed, this zoned as a single family. The history is important because it was formed as an effort to provide affordable housing for returning World War II veterans. There was an agreement between the developer and Brookline, which really put strict limits on what could be developed here. Townhouse style, no more than 20% building coverage, but no building over 2.5 stories in heights. All of these obviously violated by this proposal. There was abutting land that was set aside as that S7 area that was set aside as a buffer and then was incorporated into Hancock Village's design as a public space to be shared by all of its residents. And as we already heard, this is a historic property eligible for the National Registry. It's one of the prototypical examples of the Garden Village style. Interestingly, in 1986, Hancock Village was purchased by Chestnut Hill Realty, who then shortly afterwards eliminated all affordable housing in South Brookline by converting the rent-controlled units to market rates. In doing so, Chestnut Hill Realty itself eliminated most designated affordable housing in South Brookline. And that almost entirely accounts for the deficit in affordable housing that Brookline now faces and that makes it subject to 40B. So by its own action, it is now trying to profit from this action. In 2009, Chestnut Hill Realty proposed to develop this property. They wanted a maximal build out. 466 was what they calculated they could get, and that's what they wanted. Basically, a town committee was made, and over 2.5 years negotiated with Chestnut Hill Realty about the size and scope of this build out. you can see it never really changed after nearly 3 years of negotiations. All of them were maximal build-outs. They all paved over the green space. They all included large structures out of character for Hancock Village, and all incorporated this interesting math that 85 feet is less than 35 feet. So Chestnut Hill Realty's failure to really respond at all to any of these critiques was noted in the Planning Committee's final report. So in 2011, a Hancock Village Neighborhood Conservation District was established with a town meeting, and over 80% of town meetings supported this. And the goal of this conservation district was really to enforce the 1946 agreement. In 2012, Chestnut Hill Realty made the next move of proposing a 40B. And this was 270 units, 440 bedrooms, including 10 three-story plus units on the Greenbelt. And you can see Greenbelt was paved over and covered with buildings, and a 5-story apartment building on top of a 2-story hill. In February, Mass Development signed a letter denying eligibility for this proposal. They said that the proposal was inappropriate for the site because it eliminated the existing greenbelt, it had inadequate setbacks of 10 feet, and the proposed 5-story building is inappropriate for this site. You can see 2 days later, mysteriously, Chestnut Hill Realty withdrew its proposal prior to Mass Development sending this letter. So in 2013, Chestnut Hill Realty submitted a revised proposal. This retained the massive incongruous apartment building, but now 1 story shorter, still obliterates the green belt with buildings and roads, increased the setback by 10 feet to 20 feet, and now adds extensive regrading of the property that is sure to create water issues. Here's a comparison of these two proposals. You can see they did reduce the number of units by 30%, but the number of bedrooms really didn't change. The floor area was reduced by 25%. There was some reduction in the height of the huge apartment building. So we had a minor reduction in scale, but none of the major offending issues, the elimination of the green belt, the inadequate setbacks, the inappropriate apartment building, they were all still an element of this new plan. And also it raised new issues. It actually moved roads closer to the abutters. And as I mentioned, it had this extensive regrading. This is just a comparison of these two plans. You can see they basically fit right on top of each other. They're not really changed. So then, as you know, Mass Development decided somehow that this plan was appropriate for the site, whereas the last one was not. So now I just want to say, why is this 40B wrong? But before I say that, I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, that we're not saying that affordable housing is bad. Affordable housing is not 40B, and just to re-emphasize that point, I made this silly cartoon that this is affordable housing. Sometimes 40B helps affordable housing, but most of the time it seems that greedy developers are using 40B to do something, and you can oppose this part of 40B without being against affordable housing. So why is this wrong? I think we heard a lot of the reasons, but I just want to kind of put them in an organization. So historically, this was already developed as an affordable housing, so this is sort of like putting a 40B on a 40B. The 1946 agreement, we think, is enforceable, and that they should be held to the obligations in the contract that was made with Brookline. Hancock Village, as we heard, is historically significant, and this will destroy the essential elements that make it significant. And as I mentioned, Chestnut Hill Realty itself is the one that eliminated the affordable housing and now should not be allowed to cash in on that. Fiscally, it's obvious that this is going to be a real negative for Brookline. Hancock Village already uses $2 million more in municipal services than it pays in taxes. That will be made worse by this proposal. As we already heard about the school issues, the potential for changing the school buffer zones, and destabilizing continuity of classrooms at Baker School. The third category of problems are the misuse of 40B. So this is clearly a blatant use of a 40B to overcome local zoning. This 40B proposal is inappropriate for this site based on Mass Development's own design criteria and its evaluation in its prior denial letter. Brookline is making extensive efforts to add more affordable housing, which is permanent, as opposed to this, which would only last for 30 years. And its inclusionary zoning is a model of how to implement sustainable affordable housing. And ironically, it seems that this 40B is being used as a Trojan horse to build a road and parking where Chestnut Hill Realty has always wanted it, on the green belt. And this has already been denied 5 times by the town. The fourth category of problems are the site issues, which we've heard, the incongruous design, the size, the massing of the buildings. We have buildings that are twice the size of existing single-family lots that are 20 feet from the property line, and now with a raised 4-foot retaining wall with a gutter next to it. There's a 4-foot tower on top of a 2-story rock that's going to tower over the buildings next to it. We have destruction of the green belt, the water issues, and just by the way, as part of this proposal, Chestnut Hill Realty requested an exemption from the stormwater bylaw. This area has very little public transportation, and it's not really a wise place to put this type of development. And it will have a major impact on traffic, such as on Russet Road, which is really too narrow to handle the type of traffic it will need to handle. So in summary, this is what's wrong. Chestnut Hill Realty's greed. It has a bad cost-benefit ratio, has a bad design. And if this succeeds, I suspect we can expect more proposals like it on the rest of Hancock Village. So what can we do? I think I'd like to thank all my neighbors for coming. We asked them to come to vote with their bodies to say that Brookline needs to do everything it can to fight this proposal. And I think that includes obtaining legal counsel with expertise in 40B litigation, having the mindset that this proposal can and should be fought every step of the way, encouraging the Zoning Board of Appeals to use its powers to fully protect the interests of Brookline's residents. Thank you. So now we'd like to have Mark Bobrowski educate us a little about what we can do about 40.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the Board of Selectmen, Town Manager. My name is Mark Bobrowski. I'm with the law firm of Blattman, Bobrowski, and Mead in Concord. I'm here tonight for my partner, Jay Tallerman, who represents the Good Neighbors. Jay is, as you know, town council elsewhere, and he's doing that business this evening. He asked me to step in. Between Jay and myself, we've had vast experience in Chapter 40B. I have been involved on the municipal side in more than 100, probably in more than 35 cities and towns, serving as the ZBA's representative and oftentimes the municipal representative in this process. I've litigated more than 35 cases at the Housing Appeals Committee. I'm the municipal commentator for the Housing Appeals Committee Reporter, which is published 4 times a year and summarizes the cases at the HAC. I'm the author of the Handbook of Massachusetts Land Use and Planning Law, which is cited frequently by our courts, which has a chapter on Chapter 40B in it as well. So we're well positioned to sort of see this and to offer you an overview, if you will, as you begin the process of going forward. First, I want to emphasize that this is a very long process. This is not something that's a slam dunk. They never are arrived that way, and they never finish that way. The long and winding road here is very unpredictable. You should take it a step at a time, and you should plan your strategy accordingly. In my work on Chapter 40B, I've obviously seen good ones, and for example, Howard Cohen proposed a conversion of the cabinet furniture warehouse in Haverhill 148 downtown units within 3-minute walk of the train station. Took one meeting. But even a good one requires some supervision in terms of conditions that will gradually put it into the right place, with the right fit, with the right landscaping, with the right community assets associated with it. Most of them fall into the not-so-good category. And in the not-so-good category, you have to be careful as well. The ZBA needs to give as much scrutiny as possible to these applications that fall into the middle or bad category. So what do I mean by that? First of all, you should engage qualified experts under Chapter 44, Section 53G. Your Board of Appeals needs to use that statute to hire peer reviewers who are qualified not only in looking at the usual suspects, traffic, drainage, things with wetland impacts, but also, from what I've learned this evening, the more exotic aspects of this proposal, historic preservation, planning experts that can talk about the long efforts on the part of your community to promote and to construct affordable housing, very important in the minds of the HAC. Your expertise shouldn't just shut down at wetlands, drainage, and traffic. It should be imaginative. Where will the kids play? What kind of open space will be left available? There are experts who can testify to those issues. 53G says that those experts shall be paid by the applicant to the extent that the municipality does not have such expertise on staff. I would urge you in every instance, and I've worked with many large communities, Haverhill, Salem, to look at 40B applications. I know you have capable staff here, but that capable staff is already overburdened in their work, and to the extent you can bring in independent consultants at the applicant's expense to look at those issues, you should. It serves two purposes. One, it relieves your staff from the day-to-day, they're working hard day-to-day on Brookline's problems. They don't need additional items on their plate. And number two, it provides a degree of independence that you don't get otherwise. So 53G is an important level of focus here. Second, look at all the waivers that they've asked for. I heard Ms. Bowditch indicate a few minutes ago, and I don't mean to in any way suggest that she's misinformed, but you don't get a blanket waiver from your stormwater regulations. You don't get a blanket waiver from your wetland regulations that are locally adopted. You must itemize your waiver requests, and then those waiver requests are considered individually and or in the aggregate, and you must show that those waivers must be granted or the project will be rendered uneconomic. That's the standard. Too many applicants come in and say, waive every local bylaw or regulation that exceed state standards. That's not the way 40B works. You must itemize those waivers, and then I would go so far, if I were the ZBA, to ask the board, otherwise in charge of implementation of those regulations, for its opinion as to whether the waiver should be granted. And you'll find that that brings expertise to the table that the Board of Appeals will really rely on. I think that is ultimately what the other boards in town need to focus on here. They need to focus on an overall strategy. The ZBA is the judge. They're supposed to hear the evidence and make a determination based upon that evidence. To the extent that the other boards in town are witnesses, and to the extent that they present a compelling body of testimony to the Board of Appeals, it makes the Board of Appeals' job that much easier. I would not expect that the other boards, especially the ones that have testified here this evening, would be non-participants in this process. I would expect that they would show up at the Board of Appeals meetings and submit detailed testimony to them regarding the direction that they think this should go. And I would urge the Board of Selectmen and the manager's office to coordinate that into a coherent policy that doesn't have 6 of this and half a dozen of that. It needs to be steering the ZBA in a direction that you think is an important course of action for them. They need to hear a clear message from the other representative agencies of the city or town. I noted a couple of things here in the testimony of some of the earlier boards, and I just want to put this on the table. The first was the historic aspects of this, and I was fascinated to learn of Olmsted's design of this and involvement. We are town council in Easton, where the Oliver Ames shovel shops were the target of a Chapter 40B application. working with the applicant and with other replacement participants in the process, namely Howard Cohen from Beacon Properties, that was converted into a much better project than was ultimately or initially presented by the applicant. I'm not suggesting that's the course of action here that's right, but it ought to at least stay in the back of your mind as a possibility. The other thing I heard was the very good work of the Housing Advisory Board in summarizing Brookline's progress in constructing multifamily housing. There are at least 4 cases, one from Hingham back in the 1980s, one from Barnstable in the 1990s, another case that I can't remember, and a recent case that the Housing Appeals Committee itself decided in 2009 from the town of Middleborough, in which local efforts at planning and implementing and constructing multifamily housing were rewarded with a safe harbor. And this had nothing to do with we've gotten to 10% or we're over 10% or we've reached our planned production goals. Middleborough has reached none of those. They just had a track record of promoting housing and then putting their wallet where their efforts were. So they convinced the Housing Appeals Committee that their track record was not just about planning, but actually building. And what I heard this evening was a strong affirmation of Brookline's progress in that regard. There, as I said, there are at least 3 or 4 other cases in which the Housing Appeals Committee has recognized that and honored it as a defense to an application. So those are just some things that I would urge you to consider as you go forward. I'm not in any way trying to prejudge the outcome here. I won't be around for it. Jay will likely carry the ball for the good folks who live nearby. But the emphasis here is on the process. There's a long way to go. Recently, I had a bitter pill to swallow in the town of Holliston, where we fought tooth and nail a bad 40B proposal, 200 units on the old Bird landfill. We were flummoxed all the way by the attraction of marrying brownfield reclamation with affordable housing. The Housing Appeals Committee said it was good to go. The Superior Court judge said it was good to go. The appeals court said it was good to go. It's not going anywhere. Not going anywhere because it's a bad idea, it can't get financing, and we imposed reasonable conditions on the applicant going forward that probably will prohibit construction at any time in the future. So it's not always about the immediate battle in front of you, it's about the war. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Coppinger, would you like to make any comments? I don't want to put you on the spot, but since you're here.
I'll be brief. I just want to say thank you for having me. And since I ran in 2010, I said that I would support the neighbors and what is in the town's best interest, and I still stand firm with that. So anything that I can do from the state level, I want to be a part of this campaign. And I spoke with the Housing Committee today. I'm going to try to set up a meeting next week with DHCD. And in fact, I'd love to talk to the neighborhood's attorney to see if he has any input as to what I can do as a state legislator in his cases with other towns to make sure that I can have a strong impact on the outcome of this. So I just want to say thank you, and I applaud all the neighbors for coming here tonight. I mean, it's a tremendous showing on a cold and dreary night. So thank you, and I'll just keep the conversation going.
Okay,
Thanks.
and thank you for your We do appreciate your offer and would be very interested in helping you follow up with that in any way we can. Selectman Daley.
Can I just ask, I think I saw the fire chief back there, and is he on your list? Because I am concerned about...
We have fire and police on my list.
Okay.
There he is.
Yes. If Chief Ford would like to tell us, we know you had some concerns about some of the access for your vehicles.
Yes, and good evening. I do have some concerns with this project. As you know, we went for a walkthrough over the property, and I've reviewed the plans. There are several areas where my apparatus responding there will have to go in what is basically a dead end. So they'll get all bottlenecked in there. They have made provisions in at least one area for them to make it basically a three-point turn to back into an area. I don't like to have apparatus back up, ever. We try to avoid it. Backing up is very dangerous. This will be an area where there are a lot of children around. Besides that fact, that takes time. We'll have up to 5 apparatus just on a regular alarm reported fire in the building. We will have 5 apparatus going down these long, dead-end areas. When those apparatus are cleared from the scene, it turns out that it wasn't a fire, they're released. They can't immediately respond. They're going to have to some cases, they're going to have to back out. I find this very disturbing that this would be allowed to go forward that way. When I brought these concerns up at that walkthrough, I was hit with the standard line, well, that's how we've done it before. We've done it here, and we've done it there, and we've done it there. I would submit to the board that we used to allow homes to be built without smoke detectors. Then we allowed them with battery smoke detectors. Now we require hardwired. Times change. Exit ramps off of highways used to be built with much tighter radiuses. They're not allowed that way anymore. Just because projects have been built in the past that may have similar driveways and confining areas doesn't mean we should have them any longer. The same holds true for my concern over our ladder placement. That project is adding a lot of housing stock and a lot of lives to protect at the outskirts of our community. It takes my ladder truck several minutes longer than it should to get there. It's a long response. And again, I was hit with, well, there's also this building and this building and this building that they have to respond to. And that is all true. But why do we want to increase the life safety problem for the community? Just because those structures are already there doesn't mean that I want to see more of a problem come into the area. So with those are my 2 big concerns. My apparatus getting blocked in, well, 3. My apparatus getting blocked in, the long response, and the serious increase in potential life safety issues. I just want to make sure the board understood.
I'm just going to ask you, but I do believe your apparatus is getting bigger and bigger. Is that not
They most
correct?
certainly are.
Right.
In fact, they're bigger, but one of the areas, even to respond in there, the street has been blocked off
Right.
with a sidewalk right across it. And the first, I was told, well, they can drive over that sidewalk, was the first comment I heard. We don't drive apparatus over sidewalks and risk ripping plumbing off underneath them. So again, I do have those serious concerns with this project as it is laid out now.
Okay. Any questions for the chief? Well, thank you very much. I did hear your comments at the site visit, and I really do appreciate your concerns because I believe we all care very, very deeply about the safety of residents in the town and in Hancock Village in particular. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I do have a number of, at least I understand there are a number of members of the public who would like to speak, and so I'm going to suggest that folks who would like to make a comment line up along the windows here, sort of in the direction of the podium, and we'll take you in order as best we can. We'll try to get a sense of how many there are, and then we'll try to see how much time each person can take.
Can I plug a computer in?
Here's some pictures of Hancock Village already.
Right.
Go ahead.
I thought I would use, but,
Okay, it's looking like a fairly substantial number of people, so I'm going to ask you to try to keep yourselves to 2 minutes if you can. And as we get down to the later speakers, please be respectful of what may have already been said.
No. Hi, Lisa Jonas, town meeting member from Precinct 16 and also part of the steering committee for Preserve Brookline. I was supposed to discuss the denial approval letters, and I know that Bill mentioned them already, but I'll try to go through relatively briefly. And I just thought I'd say for the benefit of neighbors, I'm not sure if there was ever a kind of a general definition of a 40B project is. Rental, it can be rental developments or ownership units and rental development projects under Chapter 40B of the Massachusetts General Laws allow developers to circumvent certain local zoning requirements if the developments have at least 20% affordable housing, rental housing for 30 years, and developers are also required to limit their profit margins. So I don't know if that was ever said before, but so here's just picked for people who don't know Hancock Village. This is kind of what it looks like. As was already mentioned, Mass Development determined that Chestnut Hill Realty's 2012 application for eligibility under 40B was denied in February 2013. The denial letter was written demonstrating that there was a vote already to deny the project. And the letter was ready to be sent out, and here's a copy of the denial letter, and it already says overnight Federal Express and dated February 4th. And on page 2 of the denial letter, the agency specifies the grounds on which the denial was given. And it says, it is Mass Development's determination that it cannot make the finding that the conceptual project design is consistent with the design requirements outlined in 760 CMR 56.044C, which requires the subsidizing agency to take into consideration factors such as proposed use, conceptual site plan, and building massing, topography, environmental resources, and integration into existing development patterns. In particular, Mass Development has determined that the conceptual site plan is not generally appropriate for the site due to the elimination by the project of the existing greenbelt buffer between current Hancock Village residences and the abutting single-family neighborhood homes. The proposed project contains inadequate setbacks. The massing of the proposed 5-story building in the project is generally inappropriate for the site. And furthermore, the project is not generally appropriate for the site as it does not adequately use topography to mitigate impacts on surrounding neighborhoods, and the proposed buildings would not integrate well into the existing development pattern in the area, and therefore are not generally appropriate for the site. I mean, basically, they're denying the current project. So, let's see. So I just wanted to show you the map, I guess, real quickly, that they did. You can see again in yellow is the buffer zone built up, and there's the apartment house. On the next page, there's a picture of the green belt currently, for those who haven't seen it. And there's also another picture of a driveway with apartments, and that is the choice of what renters at Hancock Village will get if the green belt is eliminated and kids can no longer play there. And here is a comparison of massing. This is the upper picture are some of the townhouses, and this is an example of the apartment building.
5-story version.
The 5-story version, right? This is the first one. So, as Bill mentioned, right before the letter was to be sent, Chestnut Hill Realty retracted its application. Nonetheless, the fact that a letter of denial had already been written documents that a vote to deny, based on the reasons in the letter, had been taken. And just a few months after retracting the unsatisfactory proposal in June 2013, Chestnut Hill Realty resubmitted a minimally altered version of their proposal that still includes the elimination of the green belt and the excessive massing. And again, there's a comparative map, the top and the bottom right together. It's Bill mushed them up, but here's separate versions. Green belt, you can see again, green belt built up, apartment house, that's excessive massing. It is reduced to 4 floors, but it's still massive. Let's see. Okay. So, in any case, the town was mystified as to why Chestnut Hill Realty would resubmit an application without addressing the flaws that led to its denial in 2012. Why in the world would something that was rejected just a little while before be approved just a few months later without the flaws corrected? But the town nonetheless worked to develop a new rebuttal. It took a lot of resources, but to partly everyone's surprise, but not so much, this new resubmission of the application was approved. And I have the new, the new approval. Where's the?
Oh, sorry.
The approval letter, dated October 8th, 2013, and quite mysteriously, it mentions none of the flaws, and pretty much the only thing that it says is the site is generally appropriate for residential development, taking into account prior municipal actions to meet affordable housing needs in the municipality. So, this is somewhat unusual. We don't really understand this complete and unexplained turnaround. How did this happen? We do know that Chestnut Hill Realty replaced its legal counsel with Goulds & Stores, and that a partner from Goulds & Stores, a director at Mass Development. We assume that he recused himself, but we don't know much more than that. Now, in the past, 40Bs were generally approved with little attention to the design or to whether they made sense to the community, in the community. However, recently, these funding agencies have begun to look more carefully to determine whether the projects contain good design principles, an appropriate number of units, and whether they generally fit with the neighborhood's design. As a result, 40B proposals for 2 towns have been rejected in the past 2 years, and now this project was denied before it was approved. So, kind of an editorial, we really think that a developer should not be able to use 40B as a tool to threaten a town, to force it to approve its development plans, which it would not otherwise be able to do under the town's laws and other legal commitments. And especially in this case, where the project is on an already fully developed site housing 2.5% of the town's population. And I know that Mr. Morse of the school committee had mentioned that 1/3 of Baker School is Hancock Village residents already, but in Preserve Brookline, we did an analysis of the school directory, and we came out with 50% for last year. And also, it seems completely inappropriate in a situation where there was a site that provided a model for good development of affordable housing, where a developer, a town, and a neighborhood worked together to build housing for moderate income families that provided a quality of life for people of middle income who could not otherwise afford single-family living, who could get the advantages of that kind of housing with the kind of green space that's provided in this proposal, and should not be seen as available land to further develop.
Ms. Jonas,
So
can
we,
you please conclude?
okay. And we urge the town to act aggressively in taking what actions are need to be taken to pursue what happened in Mass Development. We understand that the town has submitted a state FOIA request to Mass Development to obtain all publicly available documents for deliberations related to Hancock Village. And I would assume it was both for the original application and also for the second application, I'm not sure. And that Mass Development to date has not yet sent a response. And we're wondering if someone could tell us when will be the legal deadline for them to respond, and what the steps are that a town should take if they do not receive the documents. There's a lot of questions that we would like to have answered by someone in legal staff, or that we can find out from these documents. How did Mass Development, for what reasons did Mass Development tell the developer to retract his application in the past? Was that a particular individual? Was this a legitimate exercise of that individual's authority? If the directors of mass development have already voted to deny an application on its merits, to what extent does the substance of that vote carry weight, and in particular for the Zoning Board of Appeals to consider denial of this project for themselves? And are there issues sufficient to warrant investigation by the Attorney General or Inspector General? And also, do you have any other proposals in mind to figure out how this plays into the larger issue? Thank you.
Okay. Okay, next, just come forward in order.
My name is Steve Cumenti. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 16. The presentations so far have largely addressed the merits or lack of merits of this project, and I wanted to point out a particular historical legal fact about this matter that has been largely, well, not really given the due it deserves. There are important historical facts in this case which bear on how this particular project should be reviewed by the ZBA. We have a unique element in this case in that there exists explicit undertakings memorialized in the town record, including a formal written agreement, a contract between the original developer and the town, which limit further development of the property as contemplated in Chestnut Hill Realty's proposal. In 1946, the town entered into an agreement with John Hancock Insurance Company to develop the current site as affordable housing for returning World War II veterans. In exchange for allowing this land to be zoned as multifamily, specific design standards were agreed upon, including no buildings to exceed 2.5 stories, and to preserve substantial green space to mitigate the impact of the project on the character of existing neighborhood. The limitations were expressed in town minutes and a separate contract signed by the developer and the town. These limitations were made part of the town's records. Some of the language regarding zoning has changed since 1946, and the terms describing zoning applicable to the property have been modified, but with no intent to modify the zoning other than to use updated legal terms. For example, S7 for the area formerly zoned for single-family homes. Chestnut Hill Realty's present proposed project to mass development would substantially violate the limitations in that contract. The significance of this contract is that if Chestnut Hill Realty is prevented by contract from building the project, then Chestnut Hill Realty does not have the control of the site necessary to submit the project to the ZBA. CHR has too casually dismissed the significance of the contract, as if it were an ordinary deed restriction under the provision of mass law dealing with restrictions created in deeds or wills. More than that, in fact, in its submission to mass development, CHR represented that there was, quote, no record of any restrictions on the property whatsoever, unquote. Of course, the restrictions are part of the town records, providing the original developer with its requested zoning exceptions, as well as a separate signed contract between the town and the developer, which by its terms is binding on its successors and assigns. In support of its false statement that there was no record of any restrictions on the property whatsoever, CHR misleadingly quoted a 2010 statement by then town council, who had said that there were no recorded documents that evidence an agreement. She did not say that there were no record of documents whatsoever. She said no documents had been recorded. She added that even if recorded, such an agreement would have expired within 30 years. The significance of recording such documents and the automatic expiration assume that the actual contract and documents would be subject to Massachusetts laws which relate to restrictions created by deeds or wills under Chapter 184, Section 23. However, the agreements and documents are not subject to Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 184, Section 23, based on case law rather similar to our situation. In particular, a recent 2011 case, the Caloran case, involved a developer attempting to ignore a 1940 restriction on development created by the town of Andover. The issue involved a large lot with a large home in a single resident zoned area. The original developer had obtained a special permit from the town of Andover to subdivide the lot, zoned for single family, and convert the large house on the lot to 8 apartments. The special permit to create the 8 apartments was conditioned by the town on no further subdivision on the lot. Some 60 years later, a subsequent owner wanted to subdivide the lot further. He argued, exactly as Chestnut Hill Realty has, that the limitations on further development imposed in that case through zoning relief granted by special permit should have expired 30 years after creation under Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 184, Section 23. The issue for the court was whether this 30-year limitation, which applies restrictions in deeds and wills, also applies to conditions or restrictions set by a government agency, such as the Zoning Board of Appeal. Chapter 184, Section 23 provides that conditions or restrictions on the use of property shall be limited to the term of 30 years after the date of the deed or other instrument or date of the probate of the will creating them. The court noted that Section 23 applies to formal requirements and effects of deeds or other instruments of conveyance of real property and not to the effect of municipal regulations on the use of property. In short, a public body, the town of Brookline, through its planning board and town meeting, and the original developer entered into a contract executed in 1946 that limits further development Hancock Village in a manner that is inconsistent with Chestnut Hill Realty's proposed project. And case law indicates that this contract remains in force today. While no two cases are exactly alike, we should be considering similar cases involving existing agreements between developers and public bodies, as opposed to restrictions in deeds and probate documents between private individuals. On a policy standpoint, it is inconsistent and wrong that when a public body grants permission for a building, it is subject to carefully considered limitations, that the building that would otherwise not be permitted is then allowed to stand forever, but the limitations on which the building was permitted would simply evaporate after a few years. The Kaloran case related to zoning under Massachusetts General Laws 40A, zoning rather than 40B. 40B may be, in some respects, relieve the developer of some town restrictions. The efficacy of 40B to impair a contract that existed prior to enactment of 40B will require evaluation in light of Massachusetts case law involving the primacy of restrictions and the laws of the Commonwealth in the United States regarding the power of states to impair contracts retroactively. This issue goes to site control. The terms of the contract are inconsistent with Chestnut Hill Realty's proposal, particularly the 4-story building. Chestnut Hill Realty did not have and never had the control of the site necessary to construct the project as submitted to mass development. And on that basis, it should not have been considered on that basis. We urge the town to consider the unique fact of the contract with the original developer in this case. We believe that based on case law and policy considerations, which underlay the court's reasoning, that the limitations agreed upon between the town and the original developer did not evaporate, and that the case law and policy would prevent the project from proceeding.
Please conclude.
I just want to make one statement because we pointed out the difference between the denial in February by the mass development and the subsequent approval, that in presenting this to the zoning board, I think it's worth pointing out that the denial was reasoned. It stated its objectives. It referred to the project in detail, whereas the approval basically stated nothing. It was just conclusory. I think that really discredits that is a basis for discrediting the actual decision approving this thing by the Mass Development Board, and it's a point worth making to the ZBA. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Judy Leichner. I live on Beverly Road, but I'm not an abutter, and it's been a long time since I've had children in the schools. So why am I here? Just like all of you, I'm here because I love Brookline. This project is wrong for the neighborhood, but more importantly for all of Brookline. It benefits only Chestnut Hill Realty and drains resources from the entire town. When I bought my house in the 80s, it was close to Hancock Village, then an affordable housing development, a pioneering project that had been carefully planned between the developer and the town, and this historic development fits seamlessly into the neighborhood. But CHR bought this historic property and seems to see it as purely developable land. As an example, indulge me in just a piece of history. A few years after I purchased my house, there was a flyer on our door from our West Roxbury neighbors, urging us to come to a meeting to support them as they prepared to fight Chestnut Hill Realty's attempt to build a 17-story owner-occupied building on the Boston part of their property. I did attend and listen to CHR tell the neighbors that this was good for the neighborhood, that this building would barely be noticed and would not affect them. After many meetings, the Boston Redevelopment Authority turned down the project and made sure that nothing like this could be built. This was wrong. Boston and West Roxbury neighborhood successfully fought a very bad project. Chestnut Hill Realty turned its attention to the Brookline side of the property. After requesting but not getting zoning changes for projects that were bad for Brookline, they turned to the 40B law. And what they are doing now is absolutely wrong, a total misuse of the 40B process to get a project that gives them roads and parking on the greenbelt that they've requested multiple times and denied, and gets them 153 market rate units, while only building the minimal affordable units required by state law. Chestnut Hill Realty has claimed that there is not adequate affordable housing in South Brookline, and that this is the fault of overregulation by the town and the neighbors objecting to affordable housing. Nothing could be further from the truth. When Chestnut Hill Realty bought Hancock Village, the 530 apartments were under rent control and affordable, as they were designed to be when they were first built. When the law changed in 1994, Chestnut Hill Realty moved all of these apartments to market rates. If they were as concerned about affordable housing as they now profess, they could have retained any number of these 530 units as affordable. They chose not to do so, and as a result, in one fell swoop, eliminated most of the affordable housing in South Brookline. And as Bill has said, if these units were still affordable, as they were designed to be when they were first built, Brookline would not be subject to the 40B law. It's circular, if not disingenuous, that the Chestnut Hill Realty seeks the Commonwealth's assistance to add affordable housing to the site when they're solely responsible for its elimination. This is wrong, an abuse of the system where a developer can buy what was affordable housing, change it all to market rate, and then use the 40B law to build a project with 153 new market rate units. Here's the equation. They took away 530 affordable units that had always been part of our area's housing stock, and now are magnanimously giving back 39. Let me be clear, just as no one in the neighborhood objected to the 500 affordable units that existed for over 50 years, we do not object to the 39 affordable units now proposed. Had Chestnut Hill Realty ever proposed a project to add 39 or 40 affordable units on their property, the neighborhood would have welcomed the project. As those of us who have watched this process from the beginning and watched Chestnut Hill Realty put out partial plans, I have no doubt that this is just the first of many building projects that they will have until they get the 500 units that they always wanted, or until the town is no longer subject to the 40B law. This is wrong. I urge the Selectmen and eventually the ZBA to do everything possible to fight this, and this is a fight worth having. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm David Fulton, Russet Road. I think you've heard eloquent discussion tonight. I've been prepared to read a single-page summary. I think I will hold off in regard to the time involved, and I think there's significant overlap. So thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is William Barrell. I am a professional engineer, a lead AP, Cub Master Brookline Pac 111, and proud coach of the Alphas, and I'm also homeowner at 45 Asheville Road, which is, if this project goes through, soon to be in the shadow of Trump Tower, Brookline. I just want to say, as an engineer, I've been involved in many projects. I've been very proud to be working on the Muddy River restoration, which was an Olmsted project. I inspected 16 of the bridges that go over the Muddy River, and you know, it was really proud. It's one of the proudest things I've done as an engineer, and it's very sad to think that a site of equal significance just on the other side of my fence could someday be paved over and made a parking lot and, you know, ramshackle townhouses that are just going to go up to fill someone's pockets. As an engineer and a homeowner, I can also attest to the fact that the pudding stone, while beautiful, is not a great neighbor, because every spring it sends hundreds of gallons of water from that site into my basement, and my sump pump works tirelessly to get it out of there. So I can say that if all this area was to be paved over, the roofs and everything, and the drainage and the grading that they propose, that not only my house, but I assume every house on Russet Road will be fighting a losing battle and will eventually have to give up those basements because they will be not usable space due to the water infiltration there. And then lastly, I just want to talk about safety. I do have two children, a third grader and a fifth grader. They like to play outside, and they actually use that spot in Hancock Village to play ball or whatever. I can attest to the fact that the residents of Hancock Village use that space mightily. I can't imagine where all those new people will go if that's gone. I can attest to the fact that almost every single day, especially in the summer, There are kids out there using that spot, and it'd be a real shame to see that go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Irene Scharf. I live on Russet Road. I'm also a town meeting member, Precinct 16. I'm going to be real quick because my points were made, but I want to make sure I emphasize that we're talking about a developer who is extremely well-financed, well represented, and as has been mentioned a couple of times here, Brookline needs to match that. We need to not taking away anything from the current representation associated with the town. Brookline needs to hire lawyers. We need the legal services of people who are among the most experienced 40B litigators in Massachusetts, and we need you to do that for us. Secondly, interesting that he was talking about engineering. I just want to, and interesting also that the lawyer mentioned that you can ask, have, or whatever the proposed developer pay for all of these engineers. The water issues are significant. I think there are also other issues I want to make sure haven't been mentioned. Impact of the construction on nearby air and health quality. Impact of blasting on existing homes as well as on Baker School. We don't know what the results will be, but we hope that you will make sure that that work is done if this moves ahead. But I really do need to go back to Elisa, who asked those questions, because I don't know if it's inappropriate for me to ask to get any information, but I am concerned about what happened in February. That's been hardly discussed tonight, and what happened just this month, especially with the now awareness that there seems to be a law firm hired by Chestnut Hill Realty that one of whose partners is a member of the Board of Mass Development. Elisa mentioned that she's aware that you all filed a FOIA request. I have looked through today, this afternoon, on the website of Mass Development. There is no mention of Hancock Village on the agenda of any of the minutes that are available to the public there. I called them, and they told me I can file a public records request, that the minutes for October should be up by the end of the week, but I actually filed a request for the draft minutes, which I haven't received yet. I would like to know if it's appropriate for me to ask you what you're all doing to investigate the potentially suspicious nature of what happened in February and what is going on, what went on in October with this letter of little substance.
I'm afraid we cannot comment. Sorry.
So
It's not that we're ignoring it,
Right.
right?
But we are dealing with it. We
Yes.
just don't want to
Okay.
talk publicly
Okay,
about it.
so we can assume that what should be happening from your perspective to protect us is happening, but you can't answer that. Okay. Thank you.
Good evening, Regina Farley, Russet Road residence for almost 50 years, and a town meeting member. My in-laws were, as I've mentioned before at this board, were involved in the negotiation on Hancock Village development, and as everyone at that time really wanted to support affordable housing for the returning vets. There was no such thing as 40B. There was just goodwill and the recognition of a need. Normally, as a trained political scientist, I love complexity theory, and I generally deplore Occam's razor, which is a way of saying something so simple. The simplest answer is the answer you should be using. This is Occam's razor. As Irene just said, we need lawyers, and happy to let them pay for it. But I would emphasize a contract expert, not just a 40B, because I would argue, as Steve Cumenti has beautifully stated, this is a contract, and you were, by reference, the party to a negotiated contract with the developer, who was also, by reference, a contract party, and this should be seen as a violation of a contract, and sue their whatever's off. But if you don't pursue it aggressively, you also are the parties of a contract. So we need the contract substantiated and upheld. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think this has really been very constructive, helpful to hear everything that partly is part of the documentation that was submitted to Mass Development by the town twice, both directly from the town and its departments, but also items submitted on behalf of the neighborhood. We are absolutely serious about doing whatever we can, and unfortunately, I can't tell you what, if anything, that is. But I can say that we believe that the community and the neighborhood is not opposed to affordable housing. And what we would hope is that there's some way of achieving a more appropriate project. If that's possible, we're definitely going to be doing everything within our power. What you do understand now is that the next step, regardless of what we do, is that their application will go to our Board of Appeals. And I think you heard from the attorney speaking earlier that there are a great number of tools that the Board of Appeals can take advantage of. And we've already committed to providing expert assistance to the ZBA as needed. So stay tuned. This is not over yet. We have one more item of business. We have to appoint members to the,
Arts Commission.
yes, Brookline Council for the Arts. I took the liberty of writing in some dates, because I think what we can do is take the incumbents, which are those three people, and then give Chris Santos the other, yeah, all right?
So, Madam Chairman and the members of the board, we have sufficient vacancies and expiring terms on the Arts Commission, and the candidates would all be assigned terms to expire in 2015, as I understand. And the incumbents for reappointment.
May I just ask, we have now Insinger, Lewis, that would, don't we already
They don't have staggered terms, as near as I can tell.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
So
They
you-
have their own
okay, so
bylaws.
You don't want to stagger some 24, that's fine.
Well,
2015
all
is-
I was proposing is
Just make
that.
them as long as possible.
Yeah, no,
That's
no,
fine.
that you
That's fine.
extend them for the next
That's-
3 years
that's
to
good.
the incumbents, and then I was just simply filling the vacancy as opposed to filling there are
that's
now
fine.
going to be 5, I think, additional. And we should find out from them whether or not
I mean, that
they
would
do have staggered terms. But just looking at this, since there's only one different date, I just figured there are only 2.
I was just curious,
Yeah.
because that would have 2 expiring in 2014, and then.
Yeah, I agree.
1,
I don't
2,
understand
3,
it.
4, 5, 6, about.
You want to
12
suggest
expiring.
giving some a different term?
I'm fine with 2015. It'd certainly provide continuity,
Well,
and there may be resignations along the way.
my
so-
only observation is all of the people who've timed out are 213, so those would all go into 15, right?
Well, wait, shouldn't some of them be going into 16?
I don't know if they have staggered terms. We don't know what the bylaw
What are
says.
they, 3-year?
Well, you see, we've got.
My
some-
understanding is that they're 3 years. I have
Yeah,
no
so
idea.
some
about
should
Well,
go into
I
16.
think some should go into 16.
that. Then you want to pick who goes into 16?
Well, the incumbents I'd put into 16. Let's see. how
Oh,
many
sorry,
members are-
16. 13
Yeah.
should go to 16. I just miscalculated. That
Can't
was
they
my
all be
mistake.
16?
Yeah, they should be 16s.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
can all.
The
be-
because then
incumbent
we'll
should-
have- Then
yes.
we'll have 5 for
Yes.
16, and we'll have.
Yeah, you're right.
5 or 6 for 15.
Put it down to
And 2
my,
for 14.
2 for, yeah, but we
Yeah.
can't.
I thought they were for 16.
yeah, the 3 incumbents should go to
The chair said
16.
15.
Yeah,
That was
right.
my question.
And then what about the new candidate?
And I was just proposing we
Let's
fill
do
the
16
vacancy,
also.
but you can
That's
put him
good.
to 16
All
too.
right, so all the candidates for reappointment or new appointments will be for a 3-year term expiring in 2016. So the incumbents are Maury Insinger,
Aye.
Jonathan Lewis,
Aye.
Giddy Saadian,
Aye.
and Chris Santos.
Aye.
I think I forgot Marie Wilson.
She did not wish to be reappointed.
You sure?
It's got 2, oh, you're looking at the wrong page.
Okay.
There's an
That's
updated
It's an
version.
update, it's
Okay,
the
good.
last The one that
done.
was at our places tonight.
We're done.
Done.
Yeah. I'm not sure that it's...
That's it.
Yeah.